The new way to. Oh God.
Oh God, indeed. Hi.
Hello.
Made
What's
for.
up?
Oh wait, so is it like a double-ended fleshlight? Is that
I
what that is?
don't know. I'm not clicking on that link.
It
But
says
I have no idea.
it says cock block is a hot new way to have sex. Made for two cocks. Do it in the moment, easy to use and clean. And then it says, you deserve mind-blowing sex. Let's face it, sometimes you need options. You and your buddy might both be tops, or you might be a side. Or maybe you just don't have time to prepare for penetration, and we get it. Life is busy. That shouldn't stop you from making a connection when the moment hits. So I think it's like a dual fleshlight, like a fleshlight for two people to use at the same time.
I was linked it. I passed it on, and here we are. Also, hello everyone else.
Oh,
Jin,
hi.
yeah,
What a
Ginger,
time
can you
to
hear me?
enter.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you're muted on
Oh,
your end. I want to
yeah, I
make
can
sure
hear
you.
you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just want to make sure we can hear you
Yeah.
as well. I just trying to equalize audios. People have been complaining my audio's odd, so I've been trying to adjust it.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Corey, hi.
Hello. Thank you for having
Been a
me.
minute.
Yeah.
Hi guys. We are in for a WIC panel tonight. Hello, Purple. I am not feeling the best. Had a really rough health day, but I'm here. I will probably be stopping the stream right after the panel. I know I had planned last night to do some more fun stuff with you guys, but today has not been a good day for me. Thank you so much for the 400-bit ties and wine. That means a lot to me. I hope you guys are all very well. Going to undeafen myself here, so it's like I said, it's been a day. Anyways, so I'm going to undeafen myself. Oh, and we have some drama too, so we'll talk about that.
Kitty, make sure she's alive.
I mean, she's streaming, so I'm pretty sure she's on her way.
She's definitely alive if she's streaming. So
She could be a ghost. Ghost
I
stream.
think that's against the rules. I don't
To
think
be
you're
a
allowed to.
ghost?
I don't think you're allowed to film dead people.
You ghostist? Racist against ghosts?
No, but I am kink shaming against people who like to have sex with ghosts.
Based. Okay, great. We'll give her another minute and then we'll just go live. You all have been on my show before. You know the drill. You know how it's done. I'll say hi to my audience. I'll introduce the topic, and then we'll get into it. Y'all have a chance to give your opening thoughts. You'll have a chance to introduce yourselves, and then yeah, if you have trouble getting in, hands.
is the
Okay.
introduction the same as the opening, or is it
Yes,
like a
absolutely same thing. It's the same thing. Yes.
good?
When I ask you to intro yourself, I mean opening.
Make
If I
sure to
ask them to do your
monologue for
opening,
like 10 minutes though.
please do
I've
not.
got good. I've got a 15-minute like lecture right here.
Nice.
No, I don't.
Is
Just
that a
ready to
kink?
read.
Is that a kink we can shame? Is that a
Yes.
kink we're allowed to shame? Okay.
I don't know. It depends
Explicit
on what
opening
side of the
statement.
panel you're on.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, Katie will get here when she gets here. Let's just get into it. Hello. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues serious and silly, from the political to the cultural. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. And boy, do we have a show for you tonight, gang. We're going to be talking about kinks. We're going to be talking about kink shaming. And is it ever okay? Let me get up the tweet that kind of started this all. Credit to Allison for making me aware of this. But Planned Parenthood put out a tweet recently, last week. It says this: don't yuck someone else's yum. Everyone deserves the freedom to explore their own sexuality free of shame and stigma. and they had stopped kink shaming. There was a graphic with like whips and chains and handcuffs and things like that. There was a discourse about this. Someone quote tweeted it, which started a whole thread. Don't yuck someone else's yum is such a juvenile, sugar-coated way of saying don't shame people for strangling and beating their partners to get off. Just say what you really mean. It blew up. Planned Parenthood had to delete their tweet. It became a whole thing. But I wanted to explore this topic because it's interesting to me. When people do things consensually, right, within the bounds of their bedroom, is that ever wrong? And can that ever be wrong? And if it is, under what conditions? And we're going to talk about that today. We're still waiting on Katie. That's why I'm being a little extra monologue-y here. Hopefully she can get here soon. But I want to give everyone here a chance. And I first of all, I want to thank my guests for being here. You are going to be kink shamed by me, and you are going to be sexualized by me. I'm just letting you know out the gate. Okay, it's
Make
gonna,
sure
especially you, Corey, especially you.
What I'm
Okay,
here
The only reason why I'm here, to be honest.
beautiful. But
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a chance to have intros, tell people who you are, and give your opening thoughts on this. And I want to start with the person who brought this to my attention. Allison, go ahead.
Okay. Some sexual proclivities, kinks, paraphilias, whatever you want to call them, are problematic, and the psychiatric community even recognizes this, and that's why there's a whole chapter of the DSM called paraphilic disorders. And I think that these can be separated into practices that are like objectively harmful to the self or others. So like extreme sadomasochism, there are people literally into things like knife play. I saw a stat on PubMed that said in America alone, every year between 250 and 1,000 people die of asphyxophilia, which is when you're basically jacking off with a noose around your neck and you accidentally hang yourself. Okay, so that's a problem. So yeah, objectively harmful to the self or others, but then also there's like sexual practices that are just so goddamn nasty that if you have like a single functioning discuss circuit in your mind, you would just be appalled. And I'm talking about things like age play, or otherwise known as autopedophilia, when a person likes to pretend to be a child. There are people who literally like to wear diapers and soil themselves. Like, okay, the idea that you have some right to just like, I mean, I'm not saying the government gets involved or whatever, but the idea that you have some right to just orgasm however you want without any social stigma whatsoever, I just don't believe in it.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for
Whoa.
bringing this topic to my attention, and we'll get into it. Katie is late, so we'll get to
I
her
know.
last. But I want
Hey.
to give Corey a chance to have his opening statement and introductions. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me and inviting me. And also, you're looking real cute today, Wick. And also, apologies for sexually harassing you. I won't do that again. But yeah, I also appreciate that I'm returning onto a panel that I can now break out my misogynist side, which I've been waiting a long time to do that. So looking forward to getting into that. But to actually answer the prompt as best I can is basically, so I think many people are conflating, something being unhealthy versus immoral, where something can be both, and I think there's a distinction to make there between using the example of, let's say, alcohol. I don't think there's anything immoral of consuming alcohol, but I would characterize it as unhealthy. And so I would put pretty much virtually all sexual kinks in that category, or rather, they can be unhealthy. But I wouldn't. What goes on between two consenting adults? None of my business. And I'm pretty consistent on many previous panels before. I'm against shaming overall across the board, and so that's pretty much where I'll leave it for now.
Okay, thanks for being here. Really excited to have you sexually harass me throughout this panel. That is my kink, and please don't shame me for it. Next up, someone who hasn't been on in a while, but we're glad to have her back. My personal favorite, Ginger Ramon.
Hey guys, I am Ginger Emoth. I am slightly in the middle here. I believe while most kinks should just be allowed to be, you feel free to have any kink that you want that's, healthy. But if you're going to name it in public, get ready to be shamed. Like there's just you can't stop people from shaming you, and doing that would stop them from having their own rights. So get ready to be kink shamed if you label your own kinks, especially on the internet. It's forever. You're never gonna get rid of that. So if you
What a
like piss,
pragmatic. What a pragmatic take. Ginger, thank you for being here, and I'm excited, right? I'm excited to see where this goes.
me too.
Next up, my other favorite, Rora, go ahead.
Thanks for having me. It's really good to be here. I am, for the most part, a pro kink shamer. I used to be very anti kink shaming and very open and accepting of a lot of types. And I had an experience that I can get into later where I was essentially fetishized without my consent. And I think a lot of people publicly put their kinks out there because that's also a kink. And then other people are being roped into it without any consent whatsoever. I think kink shaming to a degree can be healthy and good for people. And as Ginger said, like if you put it out there to a certain degree, you got to expect you're going to get it back, right? I think there's a balance to be found there. I think that, sure, in the bedroom, if you want to do certain things and you're both consenting and actually enjoying it, fine. But I also think, for example, with BDSM, there's a lot of men out there who do it because they want to abuse women. And I also think that there's a lot of people out there who enjoy BDSM maybe because there's something else underlying. And I believe I used to be one of those people, so I don't like that anymore. I believe that there was a lot of issues that made me attracted to that weren't very healthy. So although some kinks may be healthy, I do think that there's a lot that just border on mental illness. So there you have it. That's my
Okay, bordering on mental illness coming out the gate strong. Well, we'll see how this goes. Also, my favorite, Julie, go ahead.
Okay, I'm freaking out a little bit, so everyone's gonna have to bear with me. But I'm a kink shamer. I not 100% sure why. I kind of was excited to be here so I can ask questions and help figure out my own brain as to why I feel this way. I don't have an opening statement. I'm just panicking right now. Okay, great.
That was perfect.
Hey, it's all good.
I love that.
Deep breaths. We'll treat you right. Don't worry. It'll be okay. You'll have fun. We'll have fun. My top favorite and my least favorite, all at the same time, juxtapositioned in this weird duality of Schrodinger's favorite. Katie, go ahead. You got a cam for us, Katie? Okay, sweet.
So
Oh my god.
So it seems that people want to have two different conversations. One conversation is about how, yes, if you do stuff online, people will joke at you for it. That's how the internet works. Less interested in that conversation. Since we can't shame people from shaming people online, that just doesn't work. If people want to make mean comments online, they're going to do that unless we make the online police, which I don't think we're planning to do that. I will raise you a cat.
That's surprising.
Okay. However, in terms of kinks being moral or non-moral, I think consent is really important, Aurora. So I do agree that there's an element where people involve other people in their sexual pleasure without consent. So there's a reason why we don't like indecent exposure in public, because not everyone would be comfortable with that, and there needs to be a level of consent. From what I'm not sure what the tweet was, we'll get into it, but generally I think that if two or more consenting adults consent to abuse each other, I don't have a problem with that, not even a little bit. I'm full autonomy consent person. The only problem that I have is when people rope other people into their kinks without consent, which we can discuss. But yeah.
Okay, and speaking of consent, I'm glad you all consented to be here today. It should be an interesting discussion. Like I said, if you have trouble getting in, just raise your hand, right? Let me see it, and I'll try to get you in. But with that, I guess the floor is open. Consent. Oh, go ahead, Corey.
Oh yeah, I want to make let's say a distinction or make it clear. So in my mind, at least in my circles, academic circles, like shame means something specific. So like on the pro kink shame side, we're actually talking about shame and like how do people understand shame? Because shame has, generally speaking, a pretty specific definition. Where on a previous panel, WIC panel, talking about, let's say, fat shaming, or when I talked about fat shaming, they say, oh yeah, we should like gently talk about or this person to lose weight, and it's like, well, that's not really shaming, and so it's like, how would you go about kink shaming if you are pro kink shaming?
And before you answer that, $5 from Zephyr Hash to say, is kink only limited to sexual acts? There are people who genuinely pay organizations to fake kidnap them and get a rush out of it. Is that shameful or harmful?
If the rush they get is sexual, then that's sexual. You know?
It's shameful.
Depends what rush.
Yeah.
It's shameful. You should be ashamed of yourself if you're paying to get yourself kidnapped so you can have sexual gratification.
I agree.
I have no problem saying that at all. It's fucking shameful, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
I disagree.
I'm sure you do.
But no, so yeah, Rora. Okay, if you were going to shame me for my kinks, how would you do it?
I would be very blunt and not very delicate about it. I think unless being kink shamed is your specific kink, then I do think that they're, to a degree, if you're too gentle, it's not going to come across. And I think some level of kink shaming is healthy for people so they understand that people have boundaries. So I think that I don't know. I just don't think all the time it requires being like, for example, when he mentioned fat shaming and, you know, towing the line and being more gentle about it, that's not necessarily fat shaming. I agree. Like if you're having a gentle conversation with someone and you're being very mindful of the, you know, but I think some kinks, I'm sorry, but I can't at all explore that with you and why you have that and be like.
Well, the problem is that a lot of kinks, like you were saying, aren't consensual. There are a lot of kinks is like people who have a foot fetish that are getting off on you having you being in high heels for no reason. That's not consensual at all.
Is another one that you see
like
all the time.
Somebody's getting off on a part of your body without your consent. That's not.
And my thing is, like, if you're doing that and you're getting off to pictures of like if my arm's raised and you see my armpit online, don't tell me about it. That's my major issue.
If you're going to tell me about it, I have every right to tell you to go fuck off. Like,
yeah, and you're a fucking weirdo. Leave me alone. Like, if you're doing that in private and you're not putting that on someone else, like, fair enough. It's harmless in that aspect. But I think a lot of kinks border on being harmful to other people simply by people discussing them. When I don't ask to hear about that, it's violating and it makes people super uncomfortable.
Well,
okay,
I think
so this.
Well, hold on, Corey. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that a lot of us women on the panel can agree, especially if you are streamers. We get messages in our DMs like, I'm jacking off to you right now type situation, or, how does it make you feel to know I'm touching myself to you?
By the way.
Okay, well, you're a very pretty man. It's all right.
Like that
so no, I'm just
it's
saying.
weird.
So yeah, so it's like, to me, it's like, okay, why do I have to hear about that? Why is it necessary for you to tell me what you were doing? Why do I have to be involved in it?
So fuck you, Corey. My kink is to screw you over. Okay, like
that's my kink too. Bring it on.
Hey, consent reached. Awesome. Let's do this. So here's the thing. I don't think that what either of you described right now is what I talk about when I talk about kink shaming, right? So when we talk about
but when other people are talking about kink shaming, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
can I respond anyway?
Weaponize kink, the term kink shaming.
Well, I just want to make sure that we know that this isn't just about Katie's feelings. This is about the whole panel's
I understand,
feelings.
but I will say, because Katie wasn't here for this.
What is happening
just
right
real
now?
quick. Katie wasn't here for this, but Allison did name a couple kinks specifically that she thinks should be shamed.
Yeah, that's the only thing that that's the only reason why I'm doing. I forgot that you weren't here for the first part. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Allison, can you name those kinks again so maybe we can just explore those and see if Katie and Corey and Ginger, Julie.
No, I'm actually gonna finish my point. Actually.
Okay.
Funny story how that goes. Yeah. So the point that I'm making is that, Rora, I agree that people don't get to enforce their kinks onto you. And like, there's a difference between establishing one's boundaries and not being infringed upon sexually, and between like the concept of kink shaming generally. So just using Ginger's example, the concept of a foot fetish or like a foot kink it's fine because you can do it consensually. However, someone getting off on my feet or asking to see my feet while I'm streaming, I wouldn't consider that. I would not shame them for their feet fetish. I would shame them for being a shitty person that is really inappropriate in my chat. But I wouldn't call that it's not. The feet are not the problem. The problem is that it's usually men who are incredibly entitled to women's bodies and they feel comfortable just getting off on letting women know that that's what they're doing, which if that's a kink, I agree, that's a harmful kink because it relies on a non-consensual factor of that. So I
But
agree with that.
can I butt in and just say personally, I just think that a lot of the issue with kink shaming, at least some people are using, again, kink shaming as a way to almost weaponize their argument that they can do whatever the hell they want to people all the time. And I think it's commonly misused and abused. And I think that's it. I'm reading into Allison's tweet here a bit, but I think that maybe the issue is Planned Parenthood putting that out is almost enabling a lot more of that, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's what the issue is here.
The idea that people are obligated to like police their own response when actions that they would describe as like degrading or just like debased in general, I think is wrong. Like if some guy was like, I think it would be so hot if I could just like punch you in the face, like, oh, that would be so sexy. Like the idea that I have to be like, I politely decline. I wouldn't want to yuck someone else's yum. Like, fuck no. I'm going to freak out and I'm going to feel vindicated in that. And if they feel bad about their like extreme sadism, I don't care. Like, that's actually good.
Yeah, and I literally think that a lot of these situations where we're getting to, I don't want to yuck someone else's yum, we're being so open and accepting of these kinks and these things now that a lot of people are using that. For example, men who want to beat women and they say they have a domination kink or a fetish for that, but they just want to abuse women. I'm sure there are cases where it's being abused more because people are being more open and accepting. And I had that sort of abused on me in a certain
Isn't that
situation.
kind of I feel like that's kind of what happened with like choking. Like choking wasn't really a thing, but now it's kind of considered vanilla because so many people do it and it's so normalized.
Yeah, and the whole like, choke me mommy thing on Twitter or whatever. And like, everyone would comment that. And that was like a trend that people joked about forever. So it was super normalized, right? So I just think that people like specifically I've seen within a lot of kinks, and I have been in and out of doing sex work for a long time, since like 2013, 2014. I think that the more openness that I've seen, the more abuse I'm seeing with it. So I do think that shaming people and directly doing so in some instances can be healthy and keep those behaviors in check. Unless, of course, again, their kink is being shamed.
Then the issue is not the kink; it's just people not respecting like your bound. Like
Yeah.
I have to assume, okay, that those who are pro kink shaming, they're also pro fat shaming. Like that's the way to solve overweight and obesity.
That's silly.
Or,
No.
or you're against body positivity. I want you to make the argument if you're against body positivity, because this is also been, why should we make health, let's say at multiple sizes, normalized or accepted, because people just use that as an
See,
excuse.
I
How
lost
is that
90 pounds over the last couple years, and I think that there is fat shaming, but I also think that being conscious of health and realistic is also body positive. I think people took body positivity and ran with it to sort of justify self-destructive behaviors that destroy their health. And I think that when I was a bigger girl, 220 pounds, I was still good looking. I miss having big old titties. Okay. That doesn't mean that I wasn't healthy. I think that you can be fat and attractive and lovable and loved, but I also think that you need to recognize that you're unhealthy. So I just think that again.
Okay, so then how would you
in
get
love with it.
someone to recognize, just as I would say it's unhealthy to be overweight or
To
obese
stop
or whatever?
stop
I would
stigmatizing
also-
words like overweight and heavy and
Okay,
fat.
and I would also
because-
say, it's unacceptable to like as I mentioned in my opening statement and in Katie's of like consent between two adults is like where the sort of like the fundamental starting point.
I want
And
to
so, like, I would,
I'm going to put a pin in that because this is where I want to kind of get to. I'm not. I think we can talk about. I think it's very good to talk about what I think Rora and Julie and Ginger are getting at, where it's kind of, or and Allison too, where it's becoming normalized and used as a shield. But I want to talk about the kinks that are consensual. So again, people who are into the extreme kind of knife play, daddy daughter, little big daddy little girl, like age play shit. Is this something that, well, let me just ask you directly, Corey, right? If you found out your friend was, his kink was that his partner consensually pretended to be a 6-year-old girl and would wear a diaper or like dress up and do coloring books, and that was the way he could get off, right? Is he had to have his partner pretend to be a 6-year-old girl in order to, get sexual gratification. Would you not have issues with that?
If he
Uh,
had to, that's not really a kink, but okay.
well, even like I can totally engage with that hypothetical,
That
even if
is a
it
kink,
were
though.
real. Where it's
Well,
like that's why it's like I brought up my
that's
opening statement of
compulsion.
like there's a distinction between let's say something being moral and immoral versus something that's unhealthy. I have no problem saying that type of behavior potentially is unhealthy or maybe categorically unhealthy, but I would not necessarily, or rather, I actually would not shame them for that. But I would totally encourage them to, let's say, explore. They probably need some other intervention that I definitely cannot provide. Just as I would say to someone who's overweight or obese, I would not stigmatize them. I would not shame them, but I would also point out that is probably or almost certainly unhealthy. You can point out unhealthy things without shaming them or stigmatizing them. That's why, like, if you want to be on the shame side, go for it, but then just go all in. Just say you want to shame fat people. Just say you want to shame a whole bunch of things.
I'd like to actually point out to something that Katie just said, because she actually just blew this wide open for me. The compulsion versus the kink. When does it become a compulsion versus when is like an actual like kink for you? Are they similar? When do those lines get crossed? Because a lot of it becomes compulsion, just like and like an addiction, right? Where it starts off as something that you really enjoy, but then it's like a compulsion, something that pushes you to do it because it's just part of who you are now. So that's very fascinating, Katie. Thank you.
Um, uh, do you want me to respond to that? Because I was going to say something else. So.
Oh no,
Do what
no.
want.
I just wanted to say that I just appreciate the distinction between
Okay.
the compulsion and the kink. So.
Yeah, I think my uneducated, I heard somewhere that there's a difference between a kink and a fetish, and one is when you have to do it, and one is when you don't, but maybe that's misguided. But there is like an interesting thing to explore about, because we wouldn't call someone being a pedophile that they only can get off on children a kink. That's not a kink. That's the only thing that they can do. So there is a distinction there. But Allison, I want to respond to what you were talking about actually, because you gave a great example of like a guy coming to you and he's like, hey, you know what, my kink is actually punch you in the face until you bleed. Can we do that? And it's totally fine to get freaked out and be like, fuck no, dude, get the fuck out of my house. I don't trust you at all as like a person. That's fine. I wouldn't even call it kink shaming. But then where I would call it kink shaming and where I'd like to maybe us discuss the distinction is when you said you took it one step further and then it's like you're a sadistic motherfucker and we should like this is an expression of your sadism, which I consider to be a bad moral trait to have, and so like people shouldn't be like this. So like I think there's obviously compatibility, and that's why consent exists, because some guys would ask you to do anal and some girls would be like hell yeah, and some guys would be get the fuck out of my bed, no I'm not doing that. So that's how it is. The difference is like then do we say, oh, guys who want anal, they just are secretly gay, and like project a bunch of our own stuff onto it, or like what exactly are we doing there?
Well, there's a massive difference between beating the shit out of someone and wanting anal sex. I think that's
Can you
I
tell
just
me
think
what
that's
it is?
yeah, most definitely.
Okay.
I think that getting physically beaten up is a lot different than using a hole that's already there that people have been using for pleasure for centuries. I think if you're into anal because it hurts like hell, then maybe it is similar. But I think a lot of people who do anal do it because it feels good. And of course, I know feels good could be very subjective, but I think that if you
Okay.
want to beat the shit out of someone to get off, sure, if you want to do that in private and you're into that, that's fair, right? Enjoy it all
Okay.
you want, but I still think you need fucking therapy.
Right. I still think that like if it's mentioned, you have to know that people are going to be like, maybe I think differently about you now, maybe, or and I'm not saying that
That's
that's
valid.
correct, but you have to be aware that that's going to happen.
Go,
Just like
go
Yeah,
ahead,
of
Alice.
course.
Yeah. I want to give space to Allison. She's trying with her like, don't raise your hand like this, right? Where it's like, oh, no. Come on.
yeah, we're all very
my
loud.
kink,
You gotta.
my kink is large hands up front
hand
where I can
raising.
see them, so I can
We
call.
did not
That's my-
consent. You are.
I didn't want to
Yeah,
see.
Allison,
I didn't
I
want to
see
see
you.
the palm of your hand. That's disgusting.
For shame.
Yeah. Why are you
Mindful of
putting
that.
this on
It has
us?
been
Allison
quick.
the Julie. Allison the Julie. Go ahead.
Okay. All I meant by sadistic was like sort of the psychiatric sense, like sadism in like psychiatric, like paraphilia is literally just means getting off on inflicting pain upon others. So I feel like if you are aroused by like punching someone in the face, like I feel like you're just objectively sadistic. And you can say like it's not immoral to have a psychiatric disorder and like that's fine, but that's all I meant by that. But like
Okay.
the idea of like what I read as Planned Parenthood's tweet is like, you have some obligation to like walk on eggshells, like tread lightly, because you don't want to make the person feel bad about their sexual interests, which they don't state, but they kind of imply that these are like immutable traits of the self, like fundamental parts of the self. And that to make somebody, I mean, that's kind of how I read it. Like, everybody deserves to explore their sexuality free of shame and stigma. Like, that's what they say. They didn't say, people who like light choking or foot fetish. They said everybody. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Everybody.
And I used to be like that, and that was heavily used against me. I had someone who I considered a friend. They were a Twitch mod. I knew this person for years. Many video calls. I have streamers. I have a guest room. They come and stay in my house. We hang out. It's a good time. This person comes and stays with me. And the first thing they do the morning I wake up, I heard my bedroom door open and close. I'm a super light sleeper. I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe it was the bathroom door because it's across the way. I'm out on the porch in the morning when I wake up, having my morning coffee, and he comes out and he goes, I hope you didn't hear anything, but I was having some me time this morning. And he was letting me know he masturbated in my home. And when I focused in on what was happening, he had a dark blue shirt on with dried juices on his shirt. He was purposely putting that out in front of me and letting me know. My response at the time, because I don't want to yuck anyone else's yum. I'm trying not to shame, stigmatize. I said, listen, I literally leave tissues in the guest room for a reason. I don't want to hear about it. And that escalated into more and more. He would come into my bedroom while I was looking for an outfit and tell me how people gave him dirty socks because they knew he's a sexual deviant. I set a boundary with him and I explained to him that I was SA'd a long time ago and that I preferred not to be fetishized without consent. And he used that as an opportunity to tell me a story where he was alleging he was SA'd, but then used that as a bridge to tell me about another fetish. Didn't even care about how I felt. And then this person had autism, and I live in the middle of nowhere. We live super far away. So I was like, I can't kick this person out of my house. I literally cannot. I would feel so bad. He would have no way to get out of here. Like I'm hours and hours from an airport. So I'm like now not wanting, and I get it. It's my responsibility to let this person in my house. I 100% understand that I, created that situation, right? By allowing this person in my home, but I had no clue how bad it was. I just thought that you know what I mean? All I knew was he really had a foot fetish prior to this. So it gets worse. My bathroom shares a wall with the guest room, and so does the toilet. Every time I came out of the bathroom, he would be in the guest room on the bed next to the wall there, listening to me going to the bathroom. It escalated more and more to where I was at the store grocery shopping buying deodorant, and he was like, oh honey, you don't need that. Oh, because he likes smelly armpits. Now this is a person like what we talked about where it's more of a compulsion, right? But what I'm saying is in these situations when we're being so open about not wanting to kink shame someone, this is what happens. So
Okay.
I think
And
that
there's a whole host of other issues that results. So I am not a mental health professional at all, but I don't think your story is a testament or lends any credence to kink shaming. I think there's a whole host of other issues to explore there that is not the place to explore.
My point is that a lot of people see this anti-kink shaming rhetoric and then they apply that to their daily life and they're like, oh, I don't want to yuck someone else's yum. And then they're going to get themselves into situations where they're being fetishized and literally preyed upon without people's consent. This person in particular would always put their fetishes out there. I added it up, put 2 and 2 together from past conversations, and realized that, oh, this guy has been sitting in my Discord with my community for months and months, talking about his kinks lightly in conversations where we, talk about adult things or whatever, and, private talks with mods. And he did not know this, would be getting off. So I just think that, again, some level of kink shaming is healthy. And I think that when we're constantly not wanting to yuck
I'm just
people
curious.
out, we're enabling that kind of behavior.
Okay, but so I'm curious. If you think there was a greater culture around kink shaming, this situation would not have arisen, or that it will prevent situations like this. Like, is that really your claim?
I think that
there's no
there
other
were some
things going on
where kink shaming was okay.
Maybe some issues with like boundaries and people pleasing and things like that.
Hold on. I think what
Rora's
Rora's alluding to is the fact that allowing for any kind of kink shaming makes it harder for maybe I'm wrong, makes it harder for women to be like, hey, don't do that in front of me. Don't do that. Like, it makes it more nervous.
But she did tell him not to do that.
Repeatedly. So okay, yeah, but prior to that, I got into that situation because I was always so open and just accepting to these people.
No, that's not why. So like, sexual predators and being a sexual predator is not a kink. This person that has harmed you, and I'm sorry you went through this experience, is not. People will use all types of guises. Sexual predators will do that to grant certain access to things. I'm really sorry you went through that experience. That sounds awful, and it sounds like you continuously asserted yourself, and it sounds like you were constantly being sexually infringed upon. That is not okay. However, I don't see how that relates to this conversation.
Because I think that when we are constantly doing like what the Planned Parenthood tweet was implying, to not yuck someone else's yum, I think it gives a lot of space for people like that to exist. That's where I'm coming from here.
I hear you. I disagree because you haven't really explained why. It just seems like something that you feel.
Let me ask then. Let me ask you directly, Aurora. Right, and I do want to get other people in here. Right, I know a lot of people want have stuff to say, but can you explain to us how you think that normalizing kinks led to this man using it as a shield, right? Can you draw us? Can you plot us the course? Can you connect the dots for us, please?
I believe that normalization of kinks and openness about don't yuck someone else's yum, which is something he frequently jokingly said. So that's why that tweet is extra annoying. And you can call me anecdotal Andy all you want, but in my personal experience and what I believe is that if we're always open about kinks, it allows a breeding ground for these people to thrive and exist. People are going to abuse it. We need to allow some level of kink shaming so that people don't end up in situations where they're preyed upon because they literally don't want to kink shame people.
Yeah, actually, I'm now in agreement. If we shame it and stigmatize it and then people hide it, it will definitely prevent situations like this, where like if it's just now hidden and repressed, totally, they'd be totally bypassed.
If he was doing that on his own and didn't tell me about it,
it will reduce manipulation. And like, yeah, there's definitely no outside issues with like boundaries and people pleasing, a whole host of other things. It's totally the kink shaming aspect. That's the issue there, definitely.
Can I try? Corey, you're being a bitch.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to keep this short. So I feel like you feel like a lot of why things ended up transpiring the way that they did is because at the beginning there was a lot of open consensual talk about kinks, and then you found out that this person was actually getting off on this the entire time. Maybe they started feeling comfortable in that community. Maybe you feel even more violate that person like that was in your community in the first place. My only argument is that maybe this particular sexual predator needed a space that would like let him talk about his kinks and getting off on it. My point is nearly that, like, in sexual predators and other types of predators will use all types of techniques to get what they want. As Ginger pointed out earlier, like we all know as streamers that there are guys sitting out there at home like jerking off to us, and some of them message us about it, and we can't do anything about the guys who just jerk off, even though some of us might say, yeah, I wish they wouldn't do that, obviously. But where it crosses the boundary is when they inform you of it, right? That's where they're breaching your consent. So I agree with that part. That's why I call this person a sexual predator. I don't know how saying, hey, don't bring up your kinks in my VC right now would change anything about the scenario that you're talking about. That's my argument, basically.
Well, so I guess in chat, Call the Walls brought something up interesting. Kink shaming is what was it? Kink shaming is a phrase dog fuckers and abusers use. What would be your response to that? Do you think it's kink shaming to shame someone for bestiality?
If you're actually
asking-
if you're actually shaming them, that's why, like, what are we talking? Like, I don't think we're on the same page of what shaming is. But
Do
like,
you not think people who are fucking dogs should be shamed?
Like, you're not one to ask that question, okay? Like,
No,
we've seen the
this
panel.
is a question. Can
I've
we
seen the
not answer
panel.
this? Someone who
We've
is
seen the
fucking
panel.
dogs, should they not be shamed for it?
well, you've had this panel before, but I'm happy I wasn't on
have had
it.
this
But
panel.
yeah,
I'm
I'm happy
asking
to
you.
litigate this as someone who is essentially vegan. I think I can make the defense of
Sorry.
like, yeah, I can gladly label that as unhealthy and not respecting consent of sentient animals. And they're like, yeah, this person should seek some sort of intervention. But I would not shame them like that. That's not,
Well,
it's not a hard line
let me
to
go
tease
around.
out.
Allison, would you shame a dog fucker?
Easily, quickly,
Okay. Ginger,
without second
I want to
thought.
clarify. I want to
No. We'll
clarify
get
what.
to you. We'll get to
okay.
you. You'll go last. You'll get to last. So you'll have the floor. Ginger Ramoth, would you shame a dog fucker?
If they were in my vicinity, I would do more than that.
Okay. We're not gonna get into that. Katie, would you shame a dog fucker?
No, I'll just call the police.
Fair enough. Rora, would you shame a dog fucker?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Julie, would you shame a dog fucker?
Probably.
Probably. Okay. Carol,
Thanks,
take it away.
Julie. You're
Take it away,
back,
Corey.
honey. I love you.
Well, no, I just want to like then pose the question, just like so like Allison appears to like read some psychiatric research or maybe a lot of research in whatever the psychological domain. So like, how do you understand shame? Can you define that for me? When you say that you're now pro shaming of this behavior, what are you talking about?
Wow.
I mean, just clearly letting a person know this is a problem. This is a big problem.
That's-
Because, I mean, they might feel ashamed. Because
Okay, well,
it actually
then
talks about. I was
would
reading,
shame too then, because that's not
Okay,
shame.
what
Like,
about
sure,
saying
Yeah,
that you're
that's
you're a
not-
disgusting human
fucking
being
gross.
who should take their penis out of a dog? Like,
I
Get
would
out,
not.
you're disgusting.
Yeah, no, I would not say that. So that's where like I don't think we're on the same. I don't think
What if
people
it was
understand
your
what
dog?
shaming is.
what if it was your dog?
I mean,
Well, that's illegal, and I would protect my
so
dog.
now
like,
it's illegal because
You would
it's your
shoot
dog.
them. Shoot
I would-
them,
It,
Corey.
now it's illegal because it's your dog, but it's not illegal prior.
I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. I would
No,
protect
I don't
all
think you
sentient
understand
animals.
what you're saying. Because what you're saying is absolute bullshit, Corey. Absolute bullshit. You were trying to figure out what kind of shame he's talking about when they're talking
Yes,
about
because
fucking an animal.
There is an actual
But when it
definition
becomes
of
to,
shame.
no,
What
because
is
then
your
you said,
definition of
oh, well, it's
shame?
my
Like, what
dog,
is
so
it?
it's illegal, so I would get them arrested.
No, no, the sexual assault of any sentient creature is immoral, should be illegal. That includes factory farmed animals. Like, I don't know how it can be more clear of like no
You think you're
violation.
being clear?
Yes, actually, I know that I'm being clear. Of like, that's why I understand what shame is. That's why I asked for the definition. That's why from the beginning, I want to put the cards on the table saying, hey, what are we talking about when we talk about shame? And when Allison comes in saying, hey, I would just highlight it as a problem, well, then we're not talking about the same thing. I have no problem saying fucking dogs is a problem. But when I say, hey, you're a disgusting piece of shit, no, I wouldn't say that. So if you can't make that distinction in your mind, that's a you problem, not
No,
a me
I can
problem.
make the
maybe
distinction
you
in my
wouldn't-
mind. It just makes no sense.
maybe you
Then
wouldn't
I would-
start off with like insults, right? But okay, I was reading. I have a book on my laptop, and it's called The Clinical Management of Paraphilias. I found it on Sci-Hub just for this panel, and it talks about how a lot of these people don't seek treatment not because they're like repressed and ashamed. There are certainly people with an ego dystonic sexual proclivity, meaning that they are ashamed of it, they feel bad about it. But they actually say that a lot of these people, it is ego syntonic. They're fine with it. A lot of comorbid
Yes.
personality disorders. Okay, and so
Yeah.
if you say, hey, this is a problem, and they're like, well, I respect your opinion, but I disagree. At that point, I think you can go all in, guns a-blazing, fucking make them feel as bad as you want. Like,
if you think shaming a person that has an egosyntonic type of relation, especially with a personality disorder, is going to make them do anything instead of fucking the dog harder, then you're wrong. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know what to
might
say.
not do anything, but I don't think it's immoral
to
shame
be
them.
fair, what somebody said in my chat is I don't think you can shame someone who has sex with a dog
Yeah.
because shame is already flown out the window. So at the
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's why I
bring
said
it
what I
back.
said.
I know
but
we're being a
won't,
little
you know.
hyperbolic with the animal abuse thing, but let's bring it back to people who are engaging in extreme consensual kinks such as extreme BDSM, race play, right?
Wait,
Should you
can I-
shame someone? If I had a kink, right? And my kink was like a race play kink where I really loved when my partner pretended to be a slave, right? On the plantation or something. Do you think that I should be shamed for that?
Wick. So, and this relates to what I wanted to say anyway, so fuck you.
Nice.
Okay, so what I want to say is this. No one has to be okay with other people's kinks. You don't have to like them. You don't have to participate in them. You don't have to put up with them. Also, I agree with Rora, I agree with everyone else, that there is a host of what we call kinks on this panel, but I'm not actually sure they fall into this criteria of what I will now say are non-consensual kinks. Like if someone says that raping a girl is their kink, I wouldn't call that a kink. But if we want to call that a kink, then yes, there are some kinks that we should not societally allow to exist. For me, it's
Are you
about
familiar with
consent.
consensual non-consent?
Yes, I am. I participate in it. Thank you.
So, do you consider that a kink?
I will finish my point.
Okay.
Thank
I'm
you.
just trying to
So,
define what a kink.
so I think that the distinction that Corey is trying to make, and I'm not particularly on the dog thing part, but I get what you're saying anyway, is that there's a difference between this is a problem for me. I will not participate in this. In fact, it is disturbing to me that you're bringing this up to me. Don't ever do this again. This is not in my space, which is completely valid and how people should engage, right? So if somebody comes to you then and being like, how dare you kink shame me? I would tell them to fuck the fuck off, right? Because they don't get to enforce their sexuality onto me. However, if we're having a general conversations like we are right now, and we're going to start listing what kinks are bad and immoral and implies that people have personality disorders or sadistics or bad or this or this or this, that's what I would call kink shaming, because we're also saying these people are disgusting, they are lesser, they are harmful, they are this, they are that. So there's a distinction between the interpersonal relationship of like not being enforced upon and just like general things that we say.
$5 from Sever Hash to say, my bungee jumping, we are normalizing unhealthy ways. By bungee jumping, we are normalizing unhealthy ways of getting adrenaline rush. Same with skydiving. We should shame adrenaline junkies too. Rune Mudcraft for $5 said, let me get to it. A kink should not be shamed. Someone engaging with a kink negatively doesn't make that kink wrong. With consent and zero harm, it's all good, baby.
I mean, you can shame people with adrenaline, but that's not going to do anything. Like,
sure, I want to give space to Julie and to have her thoughts on this. But just real quick, I'll give my take here. I think that while someone isn't a disgusting person, perhaps there are certain kinks that are consensual that are disgusting and should be people should be disgusted by, right? It should be disgusted by, just
Why?
straight up.
Like
because
what?
age play is a good one. Again, if that is your kink, that you think it's sexy and great, and you get off when your partner pretends to be like 6 or 5 or something, that is disgusting, and what you are doing is disgusting. Julie, go ahead.
Okay, give me a minute because I need to sort my thoughts. I don't necessarily have a problem with people exploring their kinks in their own space and having safe spaces to do what they want with their kinks. I think it becomes a problem when it becomes prevalent in society and then kind of becomes normalized or almost synonymous with what healthy sex should be. I personally think healthy sex is just vanilla. It's someone you love. You're just having sex. There's no funny business. We're just fucking. You can do whatever you want to, but you don't need to do all that other shit. You don't need to do all that other shit. And I don't like the idea of like, especially like what I said earlier with choking. That wasn't really like something that was prevalent. Like it wasn't very normalized. But now it's like if you don't like getting choked, it seems weird to people, which is crazy to me. I think there's also a problem where people who are exploring their own kinks and are introducing people to those kinks, people aren't really well informed, and then they become traumatized themselves because they don't really know what they're getting into. There's more I can't think, but
Yeah, I agree. There are levels to it for me. If you're open to the people that you're having sex with about your kinks, that's fine. If you're being open about it on, like, let's say Twitter, like, I don't need it's absurd to go on Twitter and be like, yeah, me and my boyfriend just, beat the shit out of each other and got off on it type situation. Like, that shouldn't be mainstream. That shouldn't be something that we're like promoting for people and being like, hey,
yeah,
this is a healthy relationship. That may be healthy for one particular couple or certain couples or whatever, but it's not something that you should
it shouldn't be something that you think is a part of sex, because
right.
it's not. It's a part. It's a kink. It's not
Yes,
sex.
right. So it's like,
Oh, Julie,
there
you're
there
No, no,
there are
please.
things.
I'm working my own thoughts out. Please.
I know I'm trying so hard.
I'm so confused by what's going on here. Uh, okay, so I feel where it gets crazy is when like, let's say, perfect scenario, I was friends with this guy and we ended up hooking up one night, and we had been friends for years. I didn't know anything about his kinks, or anything like that, but we ended up hooking up one night. Randomly, we're about to have sex, and he reaches over and he pulls out from a drawer like what looks like a pizza cutter, and I don't know what it's called, but like it looks like a pizza cutter, but it's like the wheel has jagged edges on it, and they go like inverted, right? And he starts to like roll it down my skin, and I push it away, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm totally into blood play. And I'm like, what the fuck is, like, it had nothing to do with him being into blood play. It had everything to do with the fact that he was just randomly going to cut my skin without my consent. And in any other situation, for a lot of women, they wouldn't know what to do in that situation. So some women would be like, okay, and just let it happen and be fearful of it and just continue, and it's like, we can't let it lead to those types of situations where it's like, you should be up front about what you're into with the person that you're about to be intimate with, but you should never, fine, be public about it, but expect to be shamed. That's all I'm saying.
I also feel like if you're going to talk about your kinks to someone, you should talk to them about it when you're both like just like chilling, because like it's kind of like, okay, sorry, this is a crazy analogy, but like, when you're grocery shopping when you're hungry and you buy too much food, you should not be talking to someone about their kinks when they're horny. You should have a conversation about it, especially if they're really crazy kinks, because people might do stuff they weren't ready to do.
I think it's healthy to also know, like, and this isn't technically kink shaming, because I understand that it involves some level of dehumanization, but I think to some degree it's healthy to let people know their kinks aren't normal or healthy, and I think that that's why the Planned Parenthood tweet is a bit problematic, because it's everyone. It said everyone, and that's where I think the issue lies. But again,
I want to give I want to give space to Allison. She had her hand up, and Katie, you're next. So Allison,
Fuck you,
then
Wick.
Katie.
So I do think that there are scenarios where a person, like, okay, a case study from that textbook I mentioned earlier. Man didn't tell anybody about his kinks, so not forcing them on anybody else, but he loved putting needles in his scrotum, and he was getting constant infections, and he was seriously hurting himself, and he was fine with it. He saw no problem. He's literally in the hospital every other week for some bacterial infection that he is getting from pricking his ball sack over and over and over again. I think at that point it's like, listen, dude, you have an issue. You're fucked up in the head. Go to a doctor. Go to a doctor. I know you feel fine with it. That's because you have a problem. You have a problem. Go to a doctor. Like, and if that makes them feel ashamed of something that they weren't previously ashamed of, again, it's all consensual. He's doing it to himself. He's not letting anybody else know. But it's a major problem. Major problem.
You're pretty much advocating what I said earlier. Like, you can point out a problem without shaming. Like, I don't. That's why I
Well, what
asked
if
you,
you
like, what.
delicately do it and they
So,
don't give a fuck?
okay, yeah. So, like, if you're reading all this, like, so Allison, like, how do you understand shaming? What is the difference to you between guilt and shaming?
I think if you make a person feel guilty, like they are ashamed, you have shamed them.
No, that is not true
No.
at all.
Can you elaborate the difference?
The difference, academically in the research, and I'd encourage you to consult the research on shame and guilt, and there's a clear distinction between the two. Of like shame generally comes from a place of you are a bad person, or you are inherently sort of a bad or defective person, as opposed to guilt that is tied to the action. The action is bad. As in, when you go to an alcoholic, you would not shame an alcoholic, but you can point out that your relationship to alcohol is unhealthy. It is bad.
Is
And you
someone
should seek
doing
help.
that to
And there-
themselves? Is someone who is stabbing themselves in the balls with a needle over and over again defective? I would say kinda.
Oh
I
my
think
god,
it's healthy
That-
to
that-
you're
let,
such
like,
a
then
knowing
They
that
probably
as a
just need some
defective person
therapy.
has been a major driving force in me changing and growing. So feeling legitimate shame and feeling like less of a human because of my own behavior was a major driving force in becoming a better
I
person.
don't think you
too.
actually understand your own behavior, but that's a separate topic. But Allison, so you like to read the
Wow.
research, and so I would strongly encourage you to read the research on shame and guilt, and that there's a clear distinction between the two. Because like I think you are conflating many different things, and there's a specific definition of shame.
So, Corey, you hijacked my thing, so I'm just gonna. I think it's very clear that the way that pop culture and like kink shaming is also like more of a buzzword than anything else at this point. Like most people are uneducated; they don't understand the psychological difference between guilt and shame and what that means and how that comes in treatment. So it is silly when people are like, "You should get treatment," but they don't know how to get people into treatment. That aside, because I don't want to argue with people who like it would be pointless because we have a disagreement on what shaming is. What I wanted to talk about is this concept of like displaying it, and like we shouldn't normalize it and make it so like you have unhealthy behavior on Twitter. And with all due respect, I think the main issue here is simply like difference in how much we value people's right to live their life, even if we disagree with their choices. So, like, people do unhealthy things all the time. Like they post it on Twitter all the time. We tell them they shouldn't do it, but also people smoke, people drink, people do caffeine, people eat a lot of chocolate. Yes, some people stand in front of a cliff and they might die because of it. There are many things that we post on Twitter. No one is saying, "Hey, society, do this." So when a couple says, I beat my partner up and we both liked it," it seems like we have a sadistic person and a masochistic person who are compatible and are enjoying their consensual time together. You would be surprised. It would probably not normalize the behavior because not a lot of people are sadistic and masochistic in that way or would be willing to engage in that type of kink. Now, Rora, I think you can make an interesting point there about how some people and women would be specifically vulnerable to that, about men pushing them to potentially engage in physical behaviors that might put them in a disadvantage. However, I don't think kink shaming is the solution for that. I think education around what appropriate sexual behavior is. Ginger, I'm sorry about your experience, but what you said was very correct. The issue isn't the blood play. The issue is that the person you were with is a bad sexual partner.
Well, that's
who
for me.
attacked
That's
you.
for me. That's just like for an in-person thing. I still don't see that there's anything wrong with finding out, oh, you're into blood play, and going, oh, ew, that's disgusting. That's really fucking gross. Like explaining
That
that
can be gross to you. Yeah.
right, but being allowed to explain it, like obviously, depending on the kink, you're not going to be like, that's fucking disgusting, you're a terrible person.
Ginger, let me ask you directly, if I may. Would you say that someone is a disgusting person for liking blood play? That they're, as a person, disgusting?
No, I don't think that it's healthy, but I don't think it's a disgusting kink. I think that it's an unhealthy kink.
I think that's what I said in my opening statement.
Yeah, is there any kink where you would say that they're a disgusting person?
Yes, I don't. I think that being, I think drinking pee is disgusting. I think people.
And they are a disgusting person. To be clear.
No, I would feel like the
Okay.
this disgusting person distinction would fall under categories of I would say maybe, I actually don't think that there is somebody that I would call disgusting, as unless it was something as far as goes like uh the age play situation you're talking about, like being in diapers or something like that. I think that, but I also feel like that's a medical, like a something wrong in their brain, not something that, like, I think they should seek help. But I don't think, like Katie said, I wouldn't know how to get them that help. But
I think
so
sorry.
maybe it would come out that I would be like, that's absolutely disgusting. I could say that it's absolutely disgusting, but I wouldn't say necessarily that they're a disgusting person.
Okay, $5 from Testicle Johnson to say all of this kink shaming is kind of gross, to be honest. If two women love each other, they should be allowed to poop into a cup and then make out with the poop. Allison, take it away.
Okay,
Base.
I'm not gonna lie, haven't read about guilt versus shame. But when you described shame, you said making them feel like a defective person, quote unquote. Like, I do think some of these extreme, like, paraphilias, kinks, whatever, are indicative of some, like, psychopathology. Like, go back to ballsack pricker. Okay, extreme masochists often have psychological issues. They often have histories of abuse. Like, they have
Do you
problems that they are working through in an, like, obviously unhealthy way. I think you can say that is defective. You have a
do you
fundamental
think
problem with
that
yourself.
do you think that if someone has a psychopathology, that makes them a bad or a disgusting person?
I use the word defective. Defective. That's what Corey used earlier. Defective. I would say defective.
Okay, so you think that people who are mentally ill are defective?
In certain ways, yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean that we should hate
Okay.
them or not give them compassion or not, like, listen, I care about mentally ill people a lot. I really do. Like, but it is literally a mental defect. That is why they are
If-
mental illnesses.
I would argue you don't if you're advocating for
No.
shaming, or at least in the actual real sense of how it's used. I'll put a definition based in the research in the group chat, and
Why
it'll
don't you
make
just
that
use?
distinction.
Why don't you just use like a just give us a, like, I'm sorry, I can't think of the fucking word. Just give us an example of what you call shaming.
I mean, I might as well just like read out.
No, can you just give us an example? Like, because that's easier than just explaining the definition, because we've
So
already gone over the definition.
okay, sure. If like, I think I tried to give an example, but I'll do it again. Like, if you go to an alcoholic that clearly has a substance use disorder with alcohol.
Not an example outside of sexual kinks. We need a sexual kink example of what shaming is.
Okay, sure. I'll even use the example of anal sex, even though I don't have an issue with that. But let's just say someone has an unhealthy relationship with anal sex, whatever that may be. I can point that out as unhealthy, but I would never say you are a bad person. I would never say you are a defective person. I would say that is potentially an unhealthy behavior, and maybe you should seek some sort of interventional treatment for that. Pretty simple.
Understand how saying a person needs medical help for a thing isn't conceding that they are in some way defective. You don't go to a doctor unless you have a problem. Like, if you have a
Okay.
problem, you have a defect.
I'm genuinely asking. I'm sorry if I'm a bit heated with you. I really do. Did you ever talk to a mental health professional that because mental health professionals don't call people defective? Like, they don't say that their mental illnesses means that they're defective.
Is it just the wordage then that's the
It
problem?
is. It is just the wordage.
It's literally the wordage
Okay.
right now.
So if you use a nicer word, it's
no,
okay
no,
to
it's
say
not.
that?
I posted it in the group chat. Guilt and shame are conceptualized as emotions of self-blame. One of the most investigated theories of guilt and shame has suggested they are distinguished by whether the focus on the self for shame or on the behavior for guilt. And there's abundance of research bearing that out.
Okay.
Now, if
I'm
you want to
going
change definitions, that's fine. I just
What
want
I
to get
think the issue here is, and again, I would like to address that my prior situation, an example for all of this was simply, I understand there was a lack of boundaries. I fully took responsibility for allowing that to happen. But I think the difference between what Corey is saying, and I do agree, right? The definition of shame is what he is saying. But I think when we're talking about kink shaming, and if we ask a lot of kink communities what their definition of kink shaming is, I think it's a little bit different than what Corey's saying. So although I agree that that is what shame is, and I agree that the reality is saying someone needs help for something isn't necessarily kink shaming. A lot of kink communities would disagree with that.
I need to respond. So there's an issue here. First of all, as a person who cares about like mental health issues, I understand that you guys think it's the verbiage. If you're claiming to want to help these people, that you're so worried about their negative behavior, maybe you want to have any understanding of how you should talk about these people to try to actually help them. If you were that actually concerned about the way they're harming and they need help, that is simply not how it's discussed. And like, if you're going to send people to get medical help because they're so mentally broken in your eyes, you should probably know how the mental health community actually thinks about those people and not just look at it from your own normative lens.
Bipolar disorder. I have a mental defect. That is what that is. It's not a fucking fun thing. It's a bad thing. It's a problem. It's a defect.
Yes, you can have a mental health disorder. I have some too. Does that, we're now talking about, okay, I'm not going to go and I'd be interested in talking to you about it if you want, but like I'm not going to tell you if you're a defective person or not. I'm just not going to do that. So it's okay that you conceptualize yourself as defective. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. What I wanted to say, however, is this idea of, fuck, I don't remember what I wanted to say. It's fine, Wick.
Okay.
I'll remember it later.
It's fine. When you remember, let me know. I guess can you, Rora, because you mentioned that kink shaming in the kink communities isn't what Corey would define as shaming. Can you kind of educate us on what the kink shaming community, as you understand it, would define as kink shaming? Can you give us some examples of what you would say?
Well, I've been accused of kink shaming by simply, like, as an example, which Corey would say isn't shaming, is telling someone they need help. I do think telling someone they're disgusting is dehumanizing, and I do think that can border on shame. But I think that telling someone they're disgusting is a really extreme example. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a kinky person. I have kinks myself, but they, you know what I mean? I'm not, I guess, in any extreme realm. So again, I am very open and understanding, and I do agree that there's a lot of examples where people can enjoy things behind closed doors consensually. If it's not hurting anyone else, that's fine. But I think that there's a lot of different people who in different kink communities, which I have dated people with a lot of kinks, who would call it kink shaming, simply telling them that you don't like it, that you think that it is a problem, that you think they might need help. And I think that that's the issue, is that when you're so open and accepting to people with all types of kinks, that it enables this type of thing where people are now, anytime you tell them they need help, saying that you're kink shaming them. And again, my issue isn't Corey's definition of shame, it's that everyone else who may have a kink and may consider a certain thing kink shaming, they're using that differently. I think my issue is simply that.
Any response?
Well, I mean, that is a fair issue in terms of people not being, let's say, respectful or just, I don't know, some sort of compliance with social norms, although there's a whole conversation about that. But like, yeah, I agree. People should be respectful of boundaries. People should ideally read the room, but some people can't read the room. We're like, yeah, I agree with you. Having something thrust upon you, not a good thing. And I would never advocate for that. That's why I want to be clear of what we're talking about. But that's pretty much where I'm at.
Wick, I remember what I wanted to say.
Go ahead. And then I have another question to kind of maybe move this along.
It feels like a lot of people on the panel want to focus specifically on harm that is done in more extreme cases of kink. And I understand the concern there. The issue that I'm trying to bring up is that consent is there to basically render that like the choice of the individual participating. So as we allow many adults to make many decisions that might be harmful to them, but we don't shame them for making those decisions, and we allow it in society, like alcohol consumption, for example. But then we do this thing in this when we say, well, if your kink is like extreme blood play, then that's harmful. And it's like, not harmful if it's consensual and both people
But-
are aware of
but
what they're doing. That's the point.
Katie, it absolutely is. If your kink, even consensually, is to have someone beat you black and blue, right? If that's your kink, you consent to it. It's not might be harmful. It
There's
is
some-
harmful.
well, there's
You are
something-
So
hurting
is
yourself.
drinking
You are-
alcohol.
There's
think,
something.
though-
There's something. There's not even something just physically, not only just physically wrong, but there's something also mentally wrong there too. You don't get to that point where you want to be abused to that point without there being some sort of PTSD involved. Like there's no. I doubt that anybody is into extreme. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just saying I doubt that there's anybody that's into extreme BDSM that hasn't had a sort of interaction
trauma?
with PTSD or trauma in the past. Like there's a reason that
But-
is at the forefront of your mind. But I do want to bring something to the chat or the panel that I wanted to ask you guys. I'm sorry, but this did come in to my chat, and I thought that was interesting. Isn't the value of a kink that it's something which most consider taboo? So
Ginger, just I'll let you, the chat engage because I think it's interesting. Just to say, the argument that you're making now is the argument that people who are anti-sex work are making. They're just like, well, most of the women who do sex work were traumatized and they have some trauma or PTSD.
There's a big difference between doing sex work and asking to be beaten to a bloody pulp every night.
Yes, one is more stigmatized than the other.
Well,
yes.
again,
and it's in the opposite way though.
I just want to test your boundaries here, Katie. Right? So, hopefully, maybe I'm wrong here, but there are things that are so harmful that you would say, even if someone consents to it, we shouldn't let them do it. So,
No.
selling yourself into slavery, consensually, is that something we should allow?
We're talking about sex, Wick.
Sure. Sexual slavery. Someone wants to sell themselves into sexual slavery. Should we allow it?
What do you mean? There are people who have relationships where one
No,
is
I'm talking
completely
literally
under
sexual
control.
They want to sell themselves.
Okay, Wick, that's what I'm
consensually.
talking about. You're so unaware of the kink community that you don't even realize that that's what I'm telling you. Yes, there are people who consent to be used as sex toys to their partners.
And you
I don't
think
have
that's
an
okay
issue
to
with
allow?
Are you gonna arrest them?
What if they're consenting to be eaten, for
Good
literally
for
eaten?
them.
I think that's actually happened.
Yes, it has.
Yes,
happened.
it has.
And you think that's okay?
Yes.
I have an interesting point to make. You know how, on this panel, we're kind of having an issue with the distinction, like Corey said, between guilt and shame. I think a lot of people who think they're being kink shamed also have that issue with that distinction as well. They feel guilt and they think it's shame. And I think a lot of people have an issue with that distinction. And I think that's kind of where we're stuck.
I would agree with you, but the reason why I'd push back on that is because this panel has demonstrated that whenever we're saying, oh, maybe this behavior is harmful, then someone would come and immediately talk about how the person is defective for having a mental disability, right? So clearly it's not about the action. It's about that the action implies that there's something wrong with you as a person.
I didn't
which
say
this
there was
panel
anything defective
continues
with
to
I don't know if
demonstrate.
I
Not
agree
you,
with
Ginger.
that myself.
I mean, there was
I don't
this-
think I don't think people should be shamed for practicing kinks in their own time. I think people I just think kink should not be prevalent in society, especially when they're really violent. I think that's something you should do in your own time, and you can have your safe space to talk about that with other people. But I just don't want it to become something that's normalized because I don't want it to become something that's part of
Just a quick
healthy
question.
sex.
Quick question for the panel. Irrelevance wanting in. Should we let him in?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No backstage relevant. Sure. We'll let you in.
Ugh.
Only if
Oh,
I
sorry,
can.
Katie.
Only
No,
if I
Katie,
can
if
kink
you don't,
shame.
if you're not okay with it,
No,
Katie,
it's
keep him on.
fine.
Only
Katie,
if I
I
can
love
kink
you
shame
still.
him,
I love you.
though.
I hope you love me.
I want to be able to kink
He'll be
shame
in
him though.
a second. Absolutely.
But yeah,
I
go
want
ahead,
to ask
Wick.
Julie though. I want to ask Julie because I want to engage with her because you said that people in the privacy of their home we shouldn't really worry about it.
Yeah.
Would you also have Katie's take if privacy of their home? They're not telling anyone about it, but again, their kink is to have bits of their body cut off and eaten. Do you think that that's okay?
I think it's pretty fucking whack, but what am I gonna do about it? Am I really gonna stop anyone from doing that in their own time?
Go, Julie!
Yes. We do this all the time. We stop people from self-harming all the time. Yes, We do.
The,
absolutely do.
I don't know about
If
that
someone's
one.
on the bridge, if someone's on a bridge and looking to jump, we stop them, and we should.
That's not self-harming. That's
That-
trying to kill yourself. That
Well,
do you know?
I think there's a lot of
Like, please.
instances where
Cutting
you really
themselves all
you
the
don't,
time
you're
is
not
put 'em in a
able to
psych ward.
interject even if you want to. People
Yeah,
are gonna do what
but
they
a
want to
lot
do
of
behind
people
the
who
scenes,
cut
whether you want
themselves are
to
not
or
in a
not.
psych ward.
Well, so actually, so Allison, you brought up something I think is very poignant because I've posed this hypothetical before. You bring up self-harm and cutting. If someone doing that, should they be shamed for that?
I mean, if you have tried to say the action is bad, the action is very bad, and they don't care, you say, listen, this is indicative of a mental problem you have. You would not be doing this if you were well. You wouldn't be. And I mean, yeah, it implies that they have some sort of defect, whatever you want to call it. But like, I mean, if that is shame, then sure. Like, you save the person even if they feel bad in the moment.
Okay, so
It's
going by,
long-term goals.
would you point out to them, as someone who's actively engaged in this, cutting self-harm behavior? Would you say, hey, you're a bad person?
No.
Well, that's shaming. That is pretty much the definition of shaming, at least using the research. And you seem to be pro-shaming, just as some people here. So why would you not say that? Shouldn't that be the greatest motivation for change? Do you think that would inspire someone who's cutting themselves that, hey, there's their wake-up call. You are a bad person.
I think he's shaming you for the way you shame people.
Can you
I think
repeat
it's a
that, sorry?
last resort. I think it is a last resort, but it is acceptable if everything else has not worked.
So you
you're
like
doing
research.
whatever you can for the person.
Do you have any research to back that up?
No,
you
I didn't
consider
look into guilt versus shame. I'm not gonna lie. I was looking into paraphilias and whatnot. Like,
Isn't
So
guilt
that's why
guilt is like someone feels bad about it for doing it themselves, like they feel guilty for doing it. Shame is like you make someone feel bad about it. Wouldn't that be the difference? Am I crazy?
Well, I want to.
he's
I'm
saying
crazy,
guilt is action, shame is self. I'm saying if you have tried to make the person feel bad about the action and it's just not fucking happening, you can say, listen, this is indicative of a problem with the self.
I mean, what about
Which I would say you are a bad person, but I think saying this is indicative of a problem with the self, I think that meets the definition of shame that's been like purported here.
I also.
But you're doing that to help that person?
I mean, yes, I would say yeah.
No, because here's my thing with this argumentation. If you're saying I'm trying to protect society from these defective people, and that's why I'm doing it to feel good about myself.
No, I'm trying to protect them from themselves.
Okay, then research shows that what you want to do is causing people to harm themselves more. So
Would
you're
you
not
consider
helping.
someone a bad
Like, at all.
person who gets off to harming people? Like, just a question for anyone who wants to answer. Like, if someone gets off on, say, cutting someone, and they're the cutter and they want to hurt someone, or if, say, they get off on beating the shit out of someone, I don't necessarily have a stance on this. I'm just curious. Would you consider that person a bad person if they get off on harming someone?
Not
necessarily, no.
No.
Is it consensual?
Yeah, like if you're talking about someone's violent, if you're talking about assault.
I feel like you probably have some deep-seated issues that you need to get help with if you get off on actively harming someone. Like you probably need to if you're engaging in a kink where you're actively harming someone, you probably need therapy on the side so you can understand why you're doing that, so you don't kind of go off the rails with it.
Okay, Julie. So there are a lot of thoughts that people have that they don't act on. And usually we take people's actions to be an indication of who they are because we don't have an access to people's thoughts, right? So when we say someone is getting off on hurting someone, if they're getting off on it on literally they tied them down, the person is screaming and they're cutting them, yes, they are a bad person. If it's a consensual interaction, no, they are not a bad person. In fact, I would argue. No, wait, shut the fuck up. Wait. Sorry, Julie, I wasn't yelling at you. I was yelling at Wade.
But you can still yell at me, but like...
Okay, done. But look, so what I'm saying is simply that, in fact, I'd argue that some people with some levels of kinks might benefit from engaging in those kinks consensually.
Do you think they need therapy on the side?
So they don't engage in those kinks non-consensually.
Do you feel like they might need therapy on the side to understand kind of why they're acting that way and kind of like get themselves in a comfortable space where they can like engage with that with other people? I feel
like we all need therapy, Julie. That's my point. Every human on this planet needs therapy.
I can chill with that. I'm chilling.
I want to ask Katie, then I want Irrelevant to get in here. He just jumped in. Welcome.
Really?
Katie.
Thank you.
What is the difference here? What is the difference here? Okay, so you already
Yeah.
said someone who ties someone down and starts cutting them and gets satisfaction on it, that's a bad person, unless the person said, I consent. So those two words means the same situation.
No,
Someone's
no,
tied
Wick.
someone
No,
down
no,
and is
no,
cutting them
no,
and getting
no,
off hurting
no,
them.
no. Wick. I swear to God. I know that you're a man, right? And men are really confused on the concept of consent. Okay, I get that. I do.
Oh,
If you think consent is just about the two words of I consent, you don't
No,
understand what consent is.
They bought
No
into it. They're like, yeah, I want
I'm not
this.
done. I'm not done.
God,
I'm not done. So when I say it's consensual, I mean that there's actual informed consent, not under coercion and other asterisks because you don't know what consent is. If you are confused what I mean by consent this entire
In
time
any-
and you just think
Okay,
you can say I
Katie,
consent
wait,
and I'm okay
Katie,
with it, then
Katie,
you're
Katie,
wrong.
No. In any scenario, where any amount, you can define consent however the fuck you want. And and this works for every single scenario down the line, from signed contracts, from like years of the years of going through this and prepping, all these things. Someone who is tying someone down, cutting them, and getting sexual gratification is a bad person. Case closed.
What? If they're consenting? No.
Yeah, even if the other person's consenting, it does not matter. If you are tying someone down, cutting them up, and getting sexual pleasure of it, you are a bad person.
It's okay that you feel that way. I don't care what you feel.
Okay.
Irrelevant. Go ahead.
Can I get it? Okay. I think there's more dimensions than just consent. Okay. So for instance, I'm a super vanilla guy. Okay. Super giga vanilla.
Ooh.
All right.
Vanilla
It's got me
ice
into
cream card.
it's got me in some trouble. Okay. It's just like really basic shit. Okay. I know. Listen, I'm a super vanilla guy, but I do a lot of things that are not vanilla because the other party sexually wants it. Okay, so I can get sexual gratification out of doing things I don't want to do on my own because my partner wants to do it. So I think it's a little bit more complex. Could I get sexual gratification out of hurting my partner? Maybe. I've never done it. Maybe if they are getting sexual gratification out of me doing it to them. So I think just simply saying if you get sexual gratification out of hurting your partner, you're a bad person. I feel like this is kind of one-dimensional on that aspect of it. Okay, and then number two. All right, number two. Well, I mean, we can get to like what I explained there or whatever, but number two, like what you were saying there, Wick, where you are a bad person in that scenario. I think it really depends on like again why you're doing it. Right? I agree that you should examine why you're doing anything, why you're interested in anything. But I think just making a blanket statement, it is fine, or it is not fine, or it is bad, or whatever. I think this misses the point.
So let me respond to this. So if someone comes up to you, if you're dating a girl, and the girl's like, "Hey, can you tie me up and cut up bits of my flesh, and then just drop fat loads on me, like fat ropes on me," you should tell them no. You should say no. Right? You should say no. And if you don't say no, you're a bad person. Does that help?
If you don't say, wait, why?
If you don't tell them no, because harming people, even consensually, is wrong in these extreme circumstances. Now, again, there's a spectrum here, right?
Oh,
if
yes.
he's just asking for light choking or whatever, okay, whatever. But there is a spectrum here. But they're on the extreme ends. Even if they ask you to do it, if you consent to it, you are wrong for doing so, and that makes you immoral and a bad person. I stick with this. Let me read some super chats, and we'll get into it. You can respond. $10 for fondue. Andrew Tate has been on video beating women. He gets a pass because of it because it's a kink. Everyone can't be a PhD on philosophy to set boundaries in society. $20 from Lawson Harrison. The same research on guilt also shows that shaming people for political beliefs, ideologies has a similar effect. I'm hoping the panel practices what they preach for both cases. And $2 from Zephyr Hash. I just want to say I 100% agree with Katie today. And $2 from Rude Mudcrab to say Relly isn't vanilla, then he's sub. Okay.
No.
I guess too. Yeah, I would say I'm a bit of a people pleaser. Sure.
There.
Aw. Wick, can I tear into you? consensually.
Oh God.
Go ahead.
Actually,
I can't
before
stop you,
but
go
before
ahead.
before you do, can I just ask what do you think about like the amputee kink, Katie?
What's the amputee kink?
People get off on amputizing themselves.
Ooh.
So I mean that's
Called
something that's
apotomynophilia.
yeah. So that's something that's just solely self-based. Do you feel like there's anything like inherently like unhealthy about that?
If there's something inherently unhealthy about that, it's probably, well, depends. I assume it's not one time, which means there's not going to be much left
Right.
at some point,
It
which will
does
lead to like
continuously get worse for people who have that kink. Yes.
yeah.
But that's
is
that's
that
kink,
is that a
kink
kink?
based. Yes. I think it's
Is that
called
really a
acrophilia
kink?
or something like that.
Acrotomophilia is when you get off on other people being amputees. Apotomynophilia is when you get off on yourself being an amputee.
What the hell?
What?
Apotomynophilia?
Do
What
you
are these
do you
words?
get off on the fact that you are now an amputee, or do you get off on the amputation itself?
Both.
It's in a, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I think that this is. What did you ask me? I'm sorry. What specifically?
do you think that
I'm just learning.
do you think that there's anything like inherently unhealthy about the idea that they're eventually it's going to eventually get to the point where they no longer have anything that they can do that with, or I mean just inherently is it unhealthy in general? Is there a point to saying something should be done about that?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll answer it this way. Of course, it's unhealthy because eventually there's not going to be anything left, right? So I'm not interested in the health argument. Human adults do a lot of things that aren't healthy for them. So I don't care that people do stuff that are unhealthy for them. I'm an agency person, an autonomy person. In terms of this specific kink, the problem is that it's going to lead to a lot of problems. So I guess it's like, until you have nothing left and then you're screwed. But also they are probably, I don't know if they probably have other mental issues. I wonder about that. So yeah, I want them to seek help, right? But that's because we want everyone to seek help.
Would you okay, just once, your partner just wants wants you to cut their finger off. It's their thing, right? Right? And they ask
Yeah,
you,
no.
do you think it's okay? No, but do you think it's okay to say yes to that for another person, not you, but someone who's okay with it, to say, okay, yeah, I'll cut your finger off if that's what you want?
I think if you had conversations about it, if it's like a long process that you discuss, if it's done ethically, then yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I just personally
no.
wouldn't
The answer to this is there is no ethical circumstances where it's okay to just cut someone's finger off.
Okay, so Wick, I understand
What
that
if
you
they
don't
have
know what
gangrene?
Okay,
Yeah, right. If they got gangrene or something, right?
Wick, I understand that you have a certain version of what you think ethics is, which is okay. So, if we're talking philosophically here, I do think that freedom and agency and autonomy supersedes other things. As I said, we do unhealthy things all the time. And I think society mostly decides what's okay to do to yourself and what's not okay based on stuff that are normalized or stigmatized, not because it has inherent sense into it. I would actually like to ask you, Wick. So you, I think, know that I had pain during penetration for most of my adult life, since I was 17 till I was 24. So every time I had sex, which is a lot, I would be in a lot of pain. I couldn't stand afterwards. Do you think the boyfriend and husband that fucked me were bad people for doing that because I wasn't enjoying our sex? I was in pain.
It's not the enjoyment, and it's not necessarily the pain. It's the permanent physical damage that can result from engaging.
There was no permanent physical damage.
Exactly. But
okay.
When you beat someone,
so
black
they
and blue,
were they bad
let me answer your
people
question.
for
If you want me to answer
fucking
your
me?
question, you gotta let me answer your question.
I'll
Because
let you.
if they were beating you back black and blue, that has a much higher risk of causing permanent physical damage. And yes, even if you consented to it, even if you begged for it, even if you
That's great. That's not what I asked you. Answer my question.
Wait.
I am answering your question. One is okay because there's very low chance of
so it's
permanent
okay they
physical
fucked
injury.
me.
But one is not okay because there's a very high chance of permanent physical injury.
So
Okay,
it's
so
okay that they fucked me.
I can maybe
And
drill.
now shut up, Corey.
Okay, go
It's
ahead.
okay? Are they bad people, Wick?
Given the context that you have laid out, no.
Okay, so I have a
Thank you.
follow-up, Wick, using your metric of this permanent physical
Right.
damage. So does it be so? I'm using your example of cutting, presumably your partner's fingers off consensually. In your world, does it become morally acceptable when we get to the place where we can regrow fingers, or we can have a new finger attached that's been grown in the lab? Is it now morally permissible to do that?
Oh my god.
I'd have to re-examine it. But given that we don't live in that world, then currently,
Well,
as
so
it
where,
stands
yeah,
now,
but where are your
it-
moral intuitions now? Like, if we get to that world, like,
I think that it becomes more of a question like how long does it take, right? Are we talking a month without a finger? Are we talking a year without a finger? Are we talking like the devil's in the details here? I can't imagine a scenario in a sci-fi world that it does become okay. I can't. But devils will be in the details. But we
Okay,
got a lot of people raising their hands.
yeah, no, I want to say something about what Katie said.
and Allison, I think, is saying something or wants to say something.
Perfect
I know, but I
example
raised
of
my hand
life.
before she
Real
did, so
life.
that's sorry. I just want to say this real quick. I feel like what you were describing, Katie, I think that if they were getting off on the idea that you were in pain, yeah, I think they're a bad person.
Okay.
But if
Sharon
they just didn't,
Lopatka.
but
Real
if they
case.
just got off despite it, that's fine.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, if they're just having sex with you to have sex with you, yeah, like if it's your decision to have sex, perfectly fine.
So-
But if
so
they're
Ginger-
getting off on the idea that you're having
So
pain during
so
the
if-
sex
so
and you
you'd
don't
be
get
fine
off on
with-
that, that's bad.
So you'd be fine with a couple, like with a woman saying, "I get off on you beating me up," and then like irrelevant is like, "Look, I'm not gonna get off on beating you up, but I can be you if you want me to." And then irrelevant like punches her in the face and like breaks her face and like crushes her skull, right? Because and he enjoys that she's screaming in delight, but he's not getting off on the punching. He's getting off on her like orgasming, right? So would that make him not a bad person?
I'm gonna have to admit that you lost me on.
Is it maybe that breaking
He's not getting off on her pain. He's getting off on her getting off.
Is it maybe that breaking someone's face open for any reason is a bad thing?
Yeah,
Maybe,
wait,
yeah,
yeah,
we have to ask Ginger.
Yeah, no. Okay, so the problem is that you don't get off on pain, and you were having sex. Yeah, right. You were having sex with men, and you were asking the question: are they a bad person for doing that? Right?
Yeah.
If they are specifically getting off on the fact that you're in pain while you're having sex, and that is not your kink, then they are a bad person.
Okay, so my question is, if I have a kink of getting off on pain and my partner does not, is he a bad person for hurting me? Okay, and what if I have a kink of getting off on pain and they have a kink of getting off on me being in pain and we both have that kink?
I don't think that it makes you bad. I think that it will, but it's unhealthy and it will lead to bad ramifications.
Okay, good.
Thank you. This are bad.
Sorry,
$5,
Allison.
$5 for testicle justice, and I want Allison to go. Onomatophilia, when you're turned on by the phonetic sounds of words. Noted. But to answer the question, yeah, sadists are bad people. I'll bite that bullet. Go ahead, and then Allison. Then
I hope you bite it straight into your brain in a video game.
Real life example. Her name was Sharon Lopatka. She had a fantasy of being murdered. Spoiler alert, she was murdered. The murderer tried to convince her to not get murdered. She said, quote, "I want the real thing. I did not ask for you to preach to me. If my body is never retrieved, don't worry. Know that I am at peace." The man who killed her was a bad person for murdering a person to get off.
Did he get off on that?
Wait,
Yes.
did he get off on that?
He was a sadist. She was a masochist.
But even if he didn't get off, it's a bad thing.
Yes.
Well, I would
Murder bad.
So
yeah.
So there's kind of an issue that I have here. Does everybody here believe in the right to suicide?
No, I don't.
Of course
No.
not. Do you hear this, people?
No.
Like, what is the question?
Okay, so if
didn't
you
know
do
what the
not
question
believe in the
was.
right, if you do not believe in the right to suicide, this is going to be like a harder bridge to gap. Like, I very much believe in somebody's right to be able to like kill themselves and take themselves out of a terrible situation they're in, right? And so like harm could be a part of that as well. Like your ability to like try or your ability to do
I
things
think the
like
problem
that, right? And I
comes
don't
from
think that should-
asking someone to put that harm on you rather than doing
Right.
it to yourself.
Yeah.
So
you're being
that's
forced
the
into it.
yeah. So I'm going now to the second position, right? So I believe in somebody's ability to harm themselves. However, to a specific degree, I think we all agree there's a certain level. Even Wick agreed there's a certain level of harm that might. So, like for instance, I've never met a person sexually that hasn't been into some kind of like hair pulling or like hair shit or whatever, right? It's just
That's
it
the
seems
worst weather.
it seems extremely common. Okay, so things like that, it could be a little bit painful, but I don't think anybody would disagree with the idea that if you pull someone's hair during sex, it's not that big of a deal, right? Nobody here
Like I
thinks
said,
that's crazy.
some levels
Right.
are fine, but there's some levels where it's absolutely not
Exactly.
fine, right?
So we need to hit that there's certain levels of harm that we do not believe an outside party can do to another party, even if you believe in the right to suicide like me, right? So an extreme example is that murder case, right? If somebody's like, hey, I want to die, right? I think it'd be hot if you killed me. I can believe in their right to choose how they wish to die. If they want to jump off a fucking bridge, if they want to do whatever, right? I can believe in the right for them to be able to die whatever way, but I shouldn't be participating in helping them facilitate that activity, because I don't think there is any amount of consent that person can give me that feels sufficient to be able to participate in that activity. And where we draw that line is going to be different between everybody on this panel, and is probably manifesting in a significant difference that we're having.
Really? Do you believe in assisted suicide? Do you support that?
Yeah, I would believe in some form of assisted suicide, but not like I'm gonna shoot this person or something like that. If somebody's if somebody's on a IV,
Medical assisted
anyone else
suicide.
yeah, medical assisted suicide
Yeah.
is what
Is
I would
anyone
say.
else
Medical-
So I have a question. If we legalized a certain like type of situation where you could go to a professional that fulfills your murder fantasy kink, and that is your suicide method, and we legalize that, do you have a moral issue with that?
No. If somebody wants to kill themselves and they're like, you know what? I think it'd be fun to die this way. So be it.
Awesome. I agree.
I couldn't. The
Yeah, but
assisted
you're dumb.
suicide debate is a different debate, but it is a debate I'd love to have.
Well, I think it's connected, because it's about the harm that you can, because if you disagree with suicide, then obviously you're going to disagree with like harm. Like, because you would disagree that anybody under any circumstance can consent to another person doing X amount of harm to
That's
them.
not-
Let's say
But
hitting
that's
them
not true
or
though,
something.
because
I don't
but
think
not
that's
true though,
true.
because Katie is against the right. You said that you were against self-suiciding, right, Katie?
No, God, no.
Oh, I
I
thought
support
that's.
it.
I'm so sorry. I thought that's what
I
you
did.
said. Never
I
mind.
said
I still
I
think
support
there's
all
I think there's a
suicide
difference. I
in
think
a
there's
video
difference
game.
between self-inflicted harm and asking someone to put harm onto you.
There is a difference, but if you do not believe even yourself can consent to extreme levels of harm to you, then you would never agree that another person could inflict that harm onto you. So it's a first order thing. Do you understand? If I cannot do it to myself, then obviously another person can't do it to me, right?
No, because you might harm that person asking them to do that to you. You might traumatize them on the
Well,
way.
yeah, but that's still.
Then you find somebody that has a kink of murdering
How does that
somebody.
disagree with what I'm saying?
No, but it's different. It's different. You
Thank
might-
you,
you
dude.
might-
They're
you
different,
might-
but like you cannot. You can't disagree with that idea, no?
Wait, irrelevant. You
Yeah.
you heard Allison's murder story, right?
Yep.
How can you be against that but for assisted suicide?
The reason why I'm for assisted suicide
Versus that, because that's just assisted
is
suicide.
You
usually
guys want Made in America?
it's because it's not like a kink thing in assisted suicide. It is a very structured medical situation
Right.
where this person wants to terminate their own life, and another situation is just like, damn, bruh, I think it'd be really hot if I slit your throat. Like
that is legal in certain places. Not the kink part, but the
Well,
assisted
Canada has
suicide.
made you can, if you're suffering from cancer or whatever, you can ask to get like
which
assisted
should
death
be
or whatever.
allowed. Like you're allowed to do that. Sorry, you're allowed
Well,
to
if
do
you're
that to
terminally
animals.
ill, you're gonna die anyways. Like
I don't want. Okay, we're gonna move off the assisted suicide thing. That's a different topic.
I was on that
Sorry,
panel.
sorry,
Wick.
sorry, sorry.
Promise you. No, it's fine. It's fine. I want to get back to the
Good.
not.
I want to get
harmful.
back to that too. So I
Yeah,
hate you. You are saying wrong things.
Me?
So Wick, no, Julie, you're wonderful. You're such a
I
good
love
girl.
you. Okay, I got scared.
Mwah. Okay.
Wick, you're getting cucked on your own panel. Just pointing out.
That happens to Wick with Katie. Yeah, I don't know. She cucks him repeatedly on.
And he likes it, so it's fine.
I'm gonna kink shame you.
Look, I want to get back to the non-harmful, the non-directly physically harmful kinks that I think maybe we could discuss might be shameful and people should be ashamed of it and shamed for it and called defective or whatever. Can we not discuss age play here, right?
I think age play is the best example. Yeah, I think age play is the best example because it pulls on everybody's like emotions, right? It's like it fucking gets at you. That makes it the best. That makes it the fucking best because it's the extreme. It tests you the most.
But here's the problem. This panel doesn't. We can't agree on what shaming and what kink is, and now you want to bring age play, and everyone's going to call that pedophilia, right? Like it's not going to go anywhere.
I don't know if it's pedophilia.
So I personally
do we all agree that age play is not necessarily pedophilia?
Sure, but even if it's not necessarily pedophilia, it's still shameful.
What if it's a geriatric age play?
I would say just because it's not
61 and they're 41.
Just because it's not pedophilia doesn't mean it's not shameful. Like I said, I feel like a lot of kinks are initially kinks because they're taboos because they have an aspect of shame to them. But a lot of people prefer that about their taboos. So it's like, it's while they don't prefer like people being, oh, you're a piece of shit, like that's what they think about when they're getting off on it.
As long as we're not going to pretend like people who do age play are necessarily pedophiles.
No, they're not. They're not pedophiles. They're just.
If you
gross.
are getting off on the thought of someone pretending to be a 6-year-old girl or a 6-year-old boy, yes, there's something wrong with you.
What about a Catholic schoolgirl?
I think there's something wrong. I don't know if it's necessarily pedophilia though.
Yeah, and underage sex, I don't know if it's pedophilia. I don't.
Yeah.
We can
it's
debate
so
whether
weird.
it's not or not. But
it's
it's
like
not just weird.
Not
I'm
all
going
age
further
play
than
is
weird.
like that. Not all.
Yeah,
age
I'm going further than weird.
Stop it.
Because I don't think weird is wrong. I think it's morally wrong. I think there's something wrong with you.
What about an incest?
Yeah, Wick, but you're not explaining why. You're just saying my fifis are hurt.
I know because you keep interrupting me while I'm
Okay, that's what you do
anything. I have to use very short, quippy language because if I try to explain it, you interrupt, go in there.
You sound like a little girl, Wick. It's turning me on.
Good.
Come on.
Good. That is the whole purpose and the reason I put this panel together to sexualize all of you. Yes, you too now are relevant by coming on here. You've consented, knowingly or not, to be sexualized by me for my kink. Okay?
Someone just told me dumb and I kind of liked it, so.
So the reason why this is morally wrong is because I think that it encourages, it normalizes behavior that it is harmful to society to normalize. So when you engage in these practices, when you engage in these practices that normalize things that society should not be normalized at all, again, it's a spectrum. We could talk about these things, but this is to such an extreme degree that I think that it becomes immoral. When you are normalizing people pretending to be 6 years old, 8 years old, even 14-year-old girls or boys in order to get off, then yes, I think you are doing a harm, and that is immoral.
Okay, so I have a follow-up where it seems like you're coming from the place of like, yeah, if this becomes widespread in society, then, meets your threshold of like, this is like harmful. Do you take the same approach to, let's say, alcohol and vaping? You don't want everyone vaping and drinking.
To a certain extent, yes. I think that the normalization of drinking alcohol has done harm, and if you are normalizing this, the companies who have done this are immoral.
And do you think these are inherently bad people? These vapors and people drinking alcohol?
Depends on context. I think you can be, but it depends on the context. No, vaping's different, right? I don't know what's wrong with vaping. I don't think it's
I agree. It's harmful to other people as well.
But alcohol,
Like this.
absolutely. Drunks who go and drink so much, then get in the car and kill people, or go home and beat their wife
Physically
and children,
abusive. Yep.
right? And alcohol, drinking copious amounts, increases the likelihood of this happening by a lot.
But yeah, I read a
Right.
study about that. The prevalence of physical violence in under circumstances of people being drunk. It's like high. I forgot that. I
Yes,
can.
there is a
find the numbers,
strong
but
correlation between alcohol use and sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and a whole host of other things.
So
It
where
yes,
it's
seems
like,
like if we shamed
normalizing
alcohol
this-
usage,
yeah,
it would
definitely
be the
shame.
best thing for society.
and we
100%.
have, and alcohol use among the youth have gone down.
No,
working.
it's not the
Wick,
result.
You are delusional.
There's no way.
Like, what are you talking about?
This is
Okay,
explicitly.
we know this, that people who are younger, the younger generation, is drinking less.
It's not
than
from
the-
shame.
Prove it.
Also,
Yeah,
wait,
absolutely.
no. What do you mean we shamed it? Are you saying that like
We had all
drinking
sorts of
alcohol is
programs.
stigmatized in society?
We have
'Cause it's
stigmatized
fucking
out
not.
drinking
All
alcohol.
three
We
people.
absolutely have. Do you not
I
think
don't know
we have
about
had
that.
program after program,
Wick,
right? Like
I think
stigmatizing drinking, stigmatizing overconsumption of alcohol.
What?
We've done this through media. We've done
Wick,
this
know
through
about that,
Wick,
especially when you're young.
Wick, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about when you're saying that there are programs to help people not overdrink. That's not stigmatizing drinking. You're talking about programs to help people who are addicts. That's not the same
Yeah.
as stigmatizing drinking.
Yeah,
I
so
think
I put.
stigmatizing is pretty
Stigmatizing-
prevalent with
So-
drinking.
so
I
this
think
is born-
stigma
Alcohol is
ignores
not
drinking.
stigmatized.
There
Please
is
stop.
research about this of like we have some research to at least show or demonstrate like how do you get people to recover or like what is a motivation for change, especially for alcoholics. I put at least one research link in the chat of like shame is not an appropriate motivator for alcoholics. If anything, it leads to regression.
Do you think we have stigmatized drinking alcohol, at least to some degree, at least more than we have
I think
before?
we stigmatize
I
the
think- I
bad
think we-
outcomes of alcohol, but in general, people are like, yeah, drink up.
I think we stigmatized drinking a lot during Prohibition, and then it was revoked. It was way
Yeah,
back
that's what I'm
up.
saying.
Like
Everyone's like, how do we
Prohibition
drink,
was
buddy?
tried.
Let's
We
go
literally made it like illegal, and then we like went back on it.
Sure,
Well, I
but
mean,
that's.
Think
Go
of
ahead,
it.
Ginger.
No, I just think of it from like the DARE perspective. That didn't stop anybody from doing drugs. It literally told them where they could get drugs and what the drugs did
Yeah.
for them. Like that's
It was not the best idea.
everybody
Dare
in junior
literally
high.
taught me which drugs I
Yeah,
wanted
everybody
to
in
do.
junior high was joking about DARE, and you'd walk around with your DARE shirt as a joke
agree.
because it helped
you
you
do
figure
drugs
out
anyways.
what
Yes.
drug. Like you'd put a DARE bumper sticker on your car as a joke because it's like this is so
100%.
stupid, you
I
know.
agree,
So it's like,
but we
there's-
have, again, more than we have before in previous generations, stigmatized being an alcoholic. We have.
Stigmatizing being an
I get it.
alcoholic is not the same as stigmatizing consumption of alcohol. Literally, Wick.
does
when
have a
no,
correlation.
Wick. I am for stigmatizing sexual
Katie,
predators.
Katie,
That's not the same as
Katie.
stigmatizing the kink. This is so. I love you. This is
I don't think she does.
bad.
I don't think she does either, but that's okay. Again, I want to bring it back to the sexual kink. So thank you for
I
that.
think you do.
Right? Again,
Ooh, some
age
curl.
play is the example I'm using. I think we should stigmatize it. I think as a society, age play in the one direction. I don't care if you want to pretend to be a geriatric, 80-year-old walking with a cane.
What about geriatric with Alzheimer's? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
I
that's,
can't help it.
that's
The
a
shame
different
came out
question.
of me. I was like, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it's weird, right? But I don't think it does harm in the same way, even though the Alzheimer's thing is a point, and I'll have to think about that more. But yes, I think the sexualization of being a child is something that society should crucify
So,
me all you want
the
for this
only-
take.
The only
Crucify me all you want for this take, but yes, I think
Your argument
sexualizing being a
is
child
harmful
is
because
bad,
more
and we
people
should
will do
stigmatize
it.
it.
Yeah,
Let's
so
call me
so
crazy.
so to try and bridge the gap here, I would only agree with the assumption that it has a correlation with children being harmed. That's, or I guess the adults harming themselves in the activities. Let's assume a parallel that the thing I brought up earlier, like hair pulling or something like that, right? Assuming that the normalization of hair pulling during sexual activities resulted in people walking up and pulling people's hair in unconsensually or something like that, then I would shame that activity and the normalization of it inside of sexual acts. I don't necessarily say I haven't seen any correlation with that, but in the case of age play, if that was the case, I would shame it as well. If we are assuming, I'm not sure we know. Do we know? I don't think there's. I don't think it's
don't
proven.
know. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. So with us not knowing, I'm assuming Wick would be like, hey. If you're like dealing with age play,
yes, Wick
exactly.
is going to be unscientific.
The risk
Wick
outweighs the
might
reward,
be
is what Wick is saying, right?
Let Wick say what Wick is saying. I'm
Yeah,
saying
you
I don't
are
have a
Fifi's based.
I don't have a study showing this
No,
is
you
harmful.
don't.
But I can say, hey, the potential, the fact that this might be harmful is enough for me personally.
Yep, the risk outweighs the
risk,
reward.
right? I don't. Why?
worried.
Why is this a thing? $10 from Temperate Takes to say shaming does not fix pathology. Therapy does not fix pathology. Please stop weaponizing psychology if you don't know what you're talking about. For the love of God. $2 from Adarius. Reading this comment is my kink. You're welcome.
Okay, wait, I say if you're engaging in really like violent kinks and stuff, I feel like you should probably be getting therapy on the side so that you like kind of understand why you're engaging in that type of activity and how you can engage in that activity without being harmful to other people.
I think I said that earlier. Of like, you can label things unhealthy, and conflating immoral and unhealthy is a bad conflation. I have no problem
I'm not saying
labeling.
it's immoral.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I exactly.
I'm saying that getting off on beating people up is immoral.
Yes, Wick, but you haven't stated why. Like your entire argument for age play. To be fair, Irrelevant
because if you are getting off on hurting others, you're a bad person. I don't know why I have to explain this.
Wait, does that others include animals?
No, shut up, Corey. Maybe
non-human animals?
No, animals aren't a thing.
I don't know if necessarily makes you a bad person. I don't know if having like if you why would you say they're a bad person? Do you think they have a mental illness or like what is it because they're putting harm on other people?
Yes, because when you're hurting other people, it's wrong to do, and if you're enjoying hurting other people, it's especially wrong. Did I miss your super chat? Zephyr, I'm sorry. Can you repeat what it was? I'll read it.
Okay,
$2 thoughts on the Alabama Hot Pocket. Google it. Don't Google it, gang.
Is if the other person wants to be harmed, is it immoral or is it just the act?
Yes, even if someone asks you to cut off my finger and beat me up, it's wrong to do. It's wrong to say
okay, but what if they're working through some type of trauma and they're getting therapy and they're in a consensual relationship and they're working through it, and they eventually get to the point where they're not beating people up to not? Is that okay?
If they're them getting therapy is good, but indulging in their like, look, I'm not a therapist. If a professional medical doctor, if their prescription, right, is you need to engage in this and wean yourself on it, so okay, in that circumstances, sure, but that's not how this plays out in life. Right? You understand that? This isn't how it works out on the ground. What happens on the ground is someone comes in and says, hey, you're in a relationship, and there's, hey, I really want you to beat the shit out of me because this is my kink. Yeah, you tell the person no.
Well,
wait. Irrelevant, you gave him his point. Please, just let me.
Sure. Yeah, no, go for it.
I will let you feed him more talking points later. Okay.
Listen, I'm playing the sides I want to play. Go for it.
Just ask questions. That's all. I'm not part of this. I'm just asking questions.
Wick, I dare you to give me the line that you have, and I will make a hypothesis that your line about because you don't believe that all harm is. For example, my Twitter behavior and your Twitter behavior harms us both, right?
It doesn't harm me.
You called me a bitch yesterday, but I kind of liked it. So.
But you wouldn't say that type of harm shouldn't be engaged in. So clearly you have a line.
It doesn't harm me.
Wick, shut the fuck up.
Okay.
clearly you have a line, right? And I would venture a guess that your line is right about what a normie middle-aged Democrat from America would say, right? No, for no particular reason. So please explain a logical framework for your line and not just this is how I was raised and these are my feelings.
Okay, I will do my best.
I believe in you,
Something
bro.
that cause permanent, that has a high enough risk of causing permanent physical injury is my line. Of that makes you a bad person.
Does injury include in the brain?
Like emotional
Like
trauma.
trauma?
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
it should.
trauma would count.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you assess that potential, do you use anything like data for it, or is it just like I feel like this has
I gotta be
potential?
honest, my intuition of having seen what happens when someone gets beat the shit out of has led me to use. So no, I don't have a study on if beating the shit out of someone and punching their face and breaking their teeth can result in permanent physical injury, but I just know it's true.
No. I'm talking about the age play. I'm sorry. Are you okay with age play now?
No, I'm not.
Wait, can I?
Oh,
Can
you're
I?
not. Okay, so what's your line there?
My line there is the potential risk of
Okay, so when
causing
you assess
huge
potential,
societal harm.
how do you do that? Is it about your feelings again?
Partially, yes, and I don't think
Okay.
that's
My
wrong
man,
to
my man.
partially, yes, and that's not wrong.
Can I
It
just?
is
Yes, it's not wrong. It's the right answer. It's literally the right answer. We don't have evidence enough to prove either position. It's the only right answer. Is that he just believes that given that what we have, which isn't sufficient, we should probably err on the side of caution.
Yes,
It's the
she's an
correct answer.
emotional lady.
So
yes.
I'm curious.
But you're also emotional for agreeing with the idea that we
Okay,
should.
I just want to say that age play is being like misrepresented here.
Yes.
The majority of what we're talking about is like DDLG. Like it's not
No.
it's not age play. Age play is more so for people who are in a dom sub relationship and they can switch roles if the dom is significantly younger than the sub versus the sub being older than the dom. That's
True,
what
true.
age play is.
Okay, I'm
Actually.
speaking. Maybe
No,
I'm
I-
using the wrong term.
right.
That's my fault.
I just
right?
wanna-
I'm
I just
talking
wanna,
about the
like,
daddy
right.
daughter little girl
Right.
stuff.
I just want to say I'm very glad that now we want to be very specific about what we were talking about.
No,
And
if
that
I'm using
age
the-
play means
Yeah.
exactly this.
Yo,
We need to be very specific with our definitions, and we can't conflate things and just use colloquial terms. Now, let's
No,
be very.
Corey, it's just about what Wick thinks kinks are.
And
Quick, I
Corey.
have a question. Should we stigmatize women calling men daddy because it might raise the potential of harm to children?
Good question.
Men get off on that. I know men get off
understand.
on that. So
I
I
have
am
to
not
think
against
about
it.
that more. I am not entirely against it, but I don't know if that alone is enough because daddy daughter little girl is not, as I understand it. And if I'm ignorant on this, I'm ignorant on this, and you can call me out. But it's not simply calling someone daddy. That's not what it entails, right? So I think that
No, the girl has to. The
that
girl.
simple variable alone wouldn't be enough. That's my instinct here. Yeah.
Yeah, to go into the DDLG, it's more so like it's cosplaying as a younger version of yourself. You're cosplaying, and I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm just saying that it's you're cosplaying as like a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old or maybe even a 13 or 14-year-old, but it's like that's
so
where
I
DD
knew
yeah.
just an anecdotal Andy
what if
here.
you're
Just let me-
cosplaying as a really hot 16-year-old?
Stop. Anecdotal Andy here. I knew of a couple who was involved in this, and the woman in the situation, she had her LG persona that she'd adopt, right? And she would get out coloring books and crayons and talk in a baby voice and
What
dress
baby
up
voice?
yeah, that kind of baby voice. And
What
that
kind
was
of baby voice, daddy?
and be a
Oh my
brat,
God.
right? She called it being bratty to her daddy and things like that. And
No,
she
I'm
would
not.
get really into it. And
Katie, come on. I'm trying
yeah,
to think here.
it was gross. It was gross and it was shameful. And there's something wrong with that. Yes.
I'm good.
Yes,
thanks.
there's something wrong with that. If that's a sexual gratification thing, there's something wrong with it. Why am I getting so much pushback on this? Why?
Yeah, because you
Well,
conflate
I think
of like
it would just be
You
the
have
assumption.
feelings.
I think it would be the assumption that it's going to carry over into harming children, right?
Well,
I think
carry
if
over
we
in this anecdote, it did carry over to other aspects of their life that caused problems for the couple.
yeah, so I
Did it
don't
harm
know.
children?
I don't.
Did
Well,
it harm
I don't.
children?
Even if it potentially harmed their relationship or something, it could be unethical. But what I would say is, like, for me at least, let's imagine a world, okay? Let's all go into a fantasy world where that daddy daughter little girl stuff never negatively affects children in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't. It's just strictly to the bedroom. That's it. Like, I don't know, like spanking or some shit like that. That's pretty mid that everybody considers to be like not that big of a deal. Like, it doesn't result in some negative effect on the world. What's the problem?
I don't think there is a problem in that case.
Okay,
That's the
great.
thing. We don't
So
live in
then-
that fantasy world, and
Well,
so
is
Yes.
You
Well,
don't know if we don't live in
Exactly.
that.
We don't know. So I think the assumption that these people are doing something wrong is just as bad as assuming that they're doing something right.
I have a question,
Isn't-
and this is kind of
well,
weird, but
before you ask your question,
Yeah.
$10 from Temperate Takes. I gotta make my money, gang.
go ahead.
Is everyone on the panel in favor of universal health care so everyone has access to psychological care? Serious question, because many mentally ill live untreated because they can't afford it.
as a Canadian,
I'm
absolutely,
for it.
100%.
Yeah, I don't see why
An
not.
American who moved to Canada, absolutely, yes.
Canada. Sorry, I got excited.
Great country.
Peter, go ahead.
So, let me try to remember. Okay, so I have a question for the panelists. If there is a couple getting into DDLG, and let's say they have like even like a bedroom just dedicated to it, like she's got all her stuffed animals and stuff, or he's got whatever, doesn't matter. But they have kids. They have young kids. Do you think that there's and I don't know each way. I'm just saying, do you think that there could be a negative aspect towards that?
Are the
Well-
kids like watching their mom act like a 6-year-old? Like, do they ever see it?
I
Do
mean,
they ever see her with her crayons?
they know that there's a room specifically that has a bunch of toys and stuff that they can't go into,
A
and
special.
they, you know, like
in general.
you know, like
I'm cringing inside. Like this is just like a nightmare
no,
scenario.
I'm literally
Oh, yeah.
asking because this is a scenario that I've actually seen. So I'm just wondering, like, is this something?
This
Yeah,
is-
no. These are
Isn't this
things that
the same
happen,
as
so-
having? Isn't this the same as like when a couple has like a sex dungeon and a child knows that there's some weird stuff in the sex?
Yeah, don't go in there.
My point is, I think it's irresponsible parenting if you're going to have that in your house and your
I think so
child
too.
is
I
is
agree.
aware of it.
Yeah.
You can have your own room. The
Right.
fact that the child knows
No.
what's in the room or that they are allowed in the room is not appropriate. And I'm not saying that it's not appropriate because we have necessarily, I think it can be done more or less ethically, but I'm fine with just like
What
the same
conditions
way-
can it be done ethically,
Sh-
Katie?
Shut up, Wick. But in the same way that you don't want your kids to find your vibrators in your sock drawer, you also don't want your kids to be in your sexual playroom.
I want you to
It's
answer
not
my
that
question.
Don't want them to
Katie.
find your drugs either.
Real quick, I want you to answer my question, Katie. In what
What
way
question?
can a child, a 6-year-old child, be introduced to mommy and daddy's sex dungeon in an ethical way?
That's not really what I said. I said that,
I don't know
like
if
in
it's
Ginger's
helpful.
example, the fact that a child knows that there's a room she's not allowed in with toys in it is still not a big issue for me, as long as she doesn't know what happens in that room. I would prefer if that wouldn't be the case, because I feel bad for the kid. She wants the toys, so like that would suck. But like, it's still not sexual, right? What bothers me is when there's a certain level of exposure to sexuality that children should not experience with their parents. And if
Mhm.
you're not a responsible parent about that, then that's really fucked up. That's all there is.
Yeah, Wick, to clarify something based off of your positions. So, yeah, you don't like obviously people even consensually getting off on beating up someone else.
Yeah.
So let's say there's an individual, and they get off on simulated, as the term is, like on simulated torture porn. Just at home, they get off on that, and no one's being harmed. Are you okay with
It's
that?
less wrong, but still wrong.
Oh, can you tell me why?
Sure, because again, the same reason I think you and I would both be agree AI child porn, right? No kid is harmed in it, but it is normalizing a behavior, right?
No, it's
and
not,
if you
Wick.
defend
You
one,
don't have the
you
data
kind of
on
have to
that.
defend the other.
I think
If
it
you defend
probably
one, you kind of have
To
to
be
defend the other.
clear, we don't have the data either to
Yeah.
show that it
Yes.
doesn't increase. So
But
what
the
Wick,
risk-
I think what Brother Wick is saying is that the risk outweighs the reward. I agree with him. Is that it normalizing the behavior makes?
Brother Wick
I
is
would
not saying that. You're saying that.
He agreed with it. He just agreed with Brother Wick.
Brother Wick is influenced by his fifis, and he doesn't actually care about the
Yes,
harm.
I am.
Brother
Yeah, I am
Wick,
influenced by my fifis. That's not wrong.
Yes, it's
Okay,
not wrong
whatever.
because
I'm
we don't have
talking to-
conclusive
I'm talking
data.
to Teddy, okay? Like, shut the fuck up. I get that you're making that point. It's a valid point, and like, there's discussions on that. We can talk research, we can talk this, whatever. Wick is simply like, I think this does harm. How does it does harm, Wick? Well,
I think the
like
potential
it.
risk of it
Okay.
doing harm is the harm. That's the harm. The potential risk that may incur by normalizing this thing and simulated torture porn, right? Again, I don't know this, but the risk of it in the data
I'm
is
saying
mixed
that
on
your
this.
feelings
Let
are
me finish,
enforced.
Let me finish.
I thought being interrupted was your kink.
Is interrupting me, but come on. Like, the risk of exposing someone to simulated torture porn, and that reaches a point where they're desensitized to it, so the simulation of it is no longer enough. And so because they've been pathologized into this, or maybe pathology is the wrong word, but because this has become a compulsion, and it becomes a compulsion, so they seek out more extreme versions of this, and so no longer simulations can satisfy them, so they have to get the real thing. The risk of that happening, and it is a real risk, is enough for me to say, hey, let's not do this.
Okay, so you agree we should stop first shooter like video games, right? Because they might normalize people shooting humans.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
No. Wait.
Rap music. Rap music's gotta go.
Wait. That you don't know that's not true. It could happen. There's potential here. What do you mean?
I think it's
I'll engage with that.
That was a narrative,
Go
maybe
ahead,
like
Carol.
20, 30 years
I
ago.
can engage with it,
People
but I
are
wanna
going to
hear
do
it.
that anyways, regardless of the video game.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting argument, but that's not Wick's argument. So, Wick,
Okay.
since there's potential, right?
Because the
This is
level of
normalizing
potential-
a behavior. Like Irrelevant is sitting all day on his computer shooting people on the computer, and then you don't know if he's gonna go and like shoot
Such
a
a
woman in real
terrible
life. You don't
person.
know that.
You're such a terrible
You don't know
Irrelevant,
that.
I don't know
There's
what
potential.
Irrelevant hangs
And
out with
my
Darius, so I
feelings-
don't know what he
my
thinks.
feelings-
I have
my
no
feelings
understanding
are very
what he is
strong.
capable of. Let me answer your question. Engage with your point. If we have research on this, we do. We absolutely
Yes, we
have
do.
research on this that shows
we do.
there isn't. If you can come out with me with research that says
Would you like
AI
that research?
child porn or AI torture porn is not having any effect, then okay, maybe
Wait.
I'll change my mind. But
You
until
don't
you
know-
can do that, because
if I can
we like to
provide you
use these things.
research-
Let me finish. And
That's
we like to do this thing where, like, oh, this thing and this thing is treated in a certain way, and it's close to this thing, so we're going to treat them the same. I don't think we can. I think that the differences matter here, and I think that there is a difference. Like, if there's a first-person shooter where someone was getting off sexually to the first-person shooter, that's a problem, and that person should not be doing first-person shooters. If every time they kill someone in a video game, they're getting sexual gratification. Yes, that person should not be doing first-person shooters. Yes,
I'm really
absolutely.
glad you said that. I'm really glad you said that because first of all, that just shows that maybe you were brought up Catholic. Something with your sexuality is all like you have a specific thing for sexuality. But whatever. My point is just this: if I provided data that suggests that video games make people more likely to act aggressively, would that help you change your opinion on
There is
video
data
games?
to that, and I think that yes, that we should be mindful of this, but aggressively is doing a lot of work there. Like, aggressive can be good in certain situations. Like, we want aggressive in certain situations, right? That's not necessarily 100% bad. What situations do we want people to torture each other to get off on it?
So, Wick, Since you understand,
I want you to answer my question.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Say it
Sure,
again.
I know you weren't listening. What situations do you like? Because we understand that being aggressive in certain situations could be a good thing. Under what situations
Oh my
is
god, that's such
torturing
a dumb
someone
argument.
to
Oh
get
my god.
off a good thing?
Okay. Sorry. First of all, I need to raise my ableist counter because you just made me call you dumb. But okay. So is your argument that sometimes being more aggressive, that there's utility in
Being more
video
aggressive,
games?
yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Like on a
Do you-
panel, you
I
want to
can
be
engage with
aggressive to
that.
get in.
Oh, I
You're
can't
aggressive,
engage
Katie.
with this.
Okay.
I
I'm
can't.
not aggressive,
No,
and I still
Yeah.
got it.
no. Wick. Let me tell you this. I am humbled by this great take of yours, and I'm so humbled. I take the L. I can't engage with this level of masterfulness. Okay.
No.
So
Thank you,
I'll
I'm
convert
just
that to
backing down.
I'll convert that to
Okay.
a dub. Okay, so like you asked the question of like, so what is the utility? Like, there's some utility to aggressiveness, and so like, what's the utility of people consensually beating themselves up and getting
Beating other
mute?
people up. Yeah.
Yeah, consensually beating other people up and getting you know,
Oh,
some
and
sort
to
of
be clear, no. What is it to torturing others to get off, right?
Yeah, okay, sure. I'll even go.
Because
So
again, AI torture porn. We're not assuming consent in this torture, are we?
well, are we talking about between two individuals, two humans, or someone just
No.
watching
The
simulated?
reason you asked me why I was against AI torture porn, and I again said I don't have data on it, so it's my fifis. But the risk of it becoming something that they are desensitized to, and then have to seek out more extreme things, and eventually take it from the AI realm to the real realm, is so much that I think that we should stigmatize it and not let it happen if we can stop it.
I actually. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, please
No,
engage.
I thought that you were done. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, okay.
you.
Well, I'll finish then. I don't mean to hog my own panel here.
Your panel, go for it. I'm trying to
yeah.
understand.
But again, the difference here, right? What is the utility in that? Is my question to you.
What's the utility of
What's the
for example?
utility, right? What would be the utility, right?
So if the argument's utility,
normalizing people getting off to torturing other people. What would be the utility there?
okay, so if your argument boils down to utility, which I think it does, it's a fair assessment, then what's the utility of like anal sex then?
Well, utility also has to be rest with harm. I don't think the harm of anal sex is that big of a deal in most cases.
But you would agree there's no utility there, at least from my
Maybe
understanding
not.
of your depth.
Sure,
The
maybe not.
utility is pleasure for
Well,
people
yeah,
who
sexual
enjoy that.
pleasure, no?
Well, and someone getting off from that's gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the
but it's
only
weighed against the
utility
risk.
to
Yeah,
the only
again, but
utility to
like,
But it's weighed
like,
against the risk.
yes, if someone
And
is pleasuring
conservatives feel
them, like
longer of
getting
the
pleasure
risk
from
of normalizing anal
it's
sex.
substantively different and not the same as someone getting pleasure from torturing another person.
So
These
can
are
you?
different things.
Yeah. This is like someone saying that they're
Yes,
whatever
it
apples
is.
and oranges.
Is it the same? Are
Yeah,
you treating these
apples
things
and
the
oranges
same?
are different things, but you can, let's say, compare their skin color. Like this, like. So
They're both
what
true.
what is the substantive difference between those two scenarios of, let's say, anal sex, someone getting sexual gratification, or even just like masturbation, of just like masturbation alone? How about imagining in their mind torture porn?
Again, it's the desensitization. There comes a point, right, where imagination is no longer enough, and you have to seek it out in real life.
Okay. The problem that I have
When
with
you
that
say
though,
that, it's
the problem. That's fine. The problem with that I have with that scenario or that saying Wick though is that people watch vanilla porn and they don't escalate to certain things. There are certain people who are going to escalate, but they would escalate no matter what. That's the issue. It has nothing to do with what they're watching. They would escalate regardless.
I don't think it's no matter what or regardless. I think you're pointing to two binaries, and I don't think it's a binary. I think it's a spectrum. I do believe that there are certain people, right? If they aren't exposed to certain things, won't engage in certain behaviors, right? I absolutely believe that. We know this is true, right? People, is your argument that media doesn't influence people?
I don't.
Thank you.
Okay, I do feel that, of course, media influences people to a
So
certain extent.
but
I feel like if you don't
influences
have
people-
already that inclination, like that, it's the same thing as like people can drink alcohol and be and be okay with alcohol, but then there's a person who has an addiction issue that drinks alcohol and becomes addicted to it. It's the same.
Yes.
It's the same circumstance. Not everybody is
not-
going to lead down that path.
But just because not everyone will do that and it won't be harmful for everyone doesn't mean we can't or shouldn't stigmatize something that we recognize that the risk of this becoming even 1, 2, 3%
Well, again, but that's
more
when you, but
more
that's when you're,
normalized
but that's
being
when
a
you're,
fucking problem.
but that's when you're stigmatizing being an alcoholic versus stigmatizing actually drinking.
Again, if you stigmatize actually drinking, it does kind of help the second part too. Like there's a downstream effect.
Wick, I needed time to think about your great point, but I finally got a counter. Thank God.
Sure, but I
okay?
want to get other people in too, so it's not just interrogate Wick Day. Allison,
Why? You have a horrible point and you deserve to be grilled.
because I want to give Rora, Allison, Julie, Irrelevant time to speak as well.
Okay.
We'll start with Allison. We'll go to Rora, then we'll go to Julie, then we'll go to Irrelevant.
Let's go.
What?
This is kind of like a question in sexology, because you have mostly men who claim that, and they say, if I would not have been exposed to this porn, I would not have this sexual proclivity. And then you have people who turn around and say, you would not have found that porn if you did not have that sexual proclivity. So it's like chicken or the egg comes first. Like, did they have this inclination that just led them to accidentally stumble upon the torture porn? Or did the torture porn like ignite something that would not have otherwise been ignited? I do not think we know.
Well,
Yes, and because
I
we
agree.
don't know, the risk
Wait,
and
You're
potential
hogging your
risk.
panel.
Wait,
He's trying to err on the side of
don't-
caution.
I got a
Alright,
question.
go
Don't worry, Wick. I'll say the exact
Can I
same
ask a
thing when it comes
question?
around to me.
Don't people have like people have certain genetics that aren't like it's like environmental factors. Everyone has genes within them or whatever, and then you engage with that environment and that makes that gene like open up, and then suddenly it's like people who may be schizophrenic but they're not dealing with the symptoms, and then they do mushrooms, and then now they're dealing with crazy schizophrenic symptoms. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Is it not like
okay.
you might have that general like genetic proclivity or whatever, and then
I'm gonna read some more super chats real quick, then we're gonna engage with that. $5 from
Okay.
Testicle Johnson. Calling a man daddy in the bedroom is creepy and weird. Be a normal person and call them father. From Zephyr Hash, Civil War reenactments are bringing back slavery. And Zephyr Hash again for $2. D&D has all these goblins ambushing people everywhere. Okay, thank you. Keep giving me money, gang. This is based. It's my kink. But anyway,
money.
Rora. Let's engage with what Julie said.
Wick is a sugar baby confirmed.
True.
Yes.
Hey, you called him a baby. That's
consented.
almost age play. That's normalizing.
I won't
You're
deny
hurting
money
children.
either,
True.
guys.
Okay, these are
Give me
my
money
feelings.
too.
True.
You can't prove it's not true. You can't prove it.
€2 from Miso Kovac. Miso Kovac, I don't know how to say your name, I'm sorry. If you need extreme kinks, you're probably just bad at sex. Maybe.
But that's a take.
That's
What?
crazy.
a
That's
take.
actually crazy. I disagree
That's a
hard.
take.
I disagree
is-
hard.
It's interesting.
Rora, go ahead.
I think Wick is erring on the side of caution and just going from the standpoint of harm reduction. I just simply think that we can or cannot prove that these things will happen based on people being introduced to porn. And I think overall, he's just trying to say that if we reduce the instances of this happening, then maybe we're going to overall reduce the harm. And I'm going to be again anecdotal Andy and say I have had sex with people who were super into a lot of pretty wild, interesting kinks. And as they had more normal sex, they got way less interested in those kinks. And I believe that's a situation where maybe they were being introduced to more and more, and they weren't having a lot of real life sex, so they were desensitized. And I think that having a healthy sexual relationship helped with the compulsions of seeking out more and more stimulation via the internet. And I also want to just say that Corey kind of changed my standpoint a little bit on kink shaming, because he mentioned shaming an alcoholic and it not being productive. Well, I used to be 220 pounds. I lost 90 pounds. And one of the biggest factors in me losing weight was if I slipped up or ate something bad, I didn't shame myself, because when I felt shame, I would say, fuck it and do it more. So that's all I wanted to say.
That's wonderful. Yay.
That is
Uh,
wonderful.
W.
Relevant, go ahead. And then
Yeah, so I would say well, hold on, brother. I would say that I'm in the same position. Hold on, man. I'm in the same position.
Animal out there.
Yeah, I'm in the same position as Wick for most everything except for the stigmatizing part, for the exact reason that Rora brought up, which was really great. Okay, so I believe I like to err on the side of caution. I understand how Katie is getting to a separate position here because they err on the side of autonomy,
Agency,
right?
autonomy,
Autonomy,
freedom,
right? The availability
Americanism.
for people to freely act, based with their on their own volition. I, however, think that there are certain specific actions, such as the extreme ones, not DDLG, and things like that, where I'm like, okay, or like torture stuff, where I'm like, okay, maybe we should probably not do stuff like this. But there's, again, going to come back to it, there is that line. So I think at the end of the day, it's about risk versus reward, right? The outcomes of these actions, we don't know if it's going to result in more people doing it or if it's just going to stay at like porn or stay as just like a fantasy. So probably the best thing to do would be to err on the side of caution, in my
At what
opinion.
point is it okay to rob someone of their agency? There's just an interesting question that I just thought of.
But there are points where we do, right? Like, apparently, Katie
Corey, I
robs
waited.
me of the
Thank you.
agency to talk uninterrupted all the time. Like, she says she believes in freedom, except for the freedom of Wick to speak.
Not yours.
That is not the freedom that she respects. Or anything.
Lock
But
'em up.
Katie, go ahead.
Okay, so you know how I said that you had a brilliant point, which I didn't mean, but like I thought about it. And since we're just allowed to go based on our feelings and just make up shit, right? Or like go off of like psychological theories. So I think that in the same vein that you say that people might get desensitized and stuff like that, I'm going to counter and say that maybe giving people who have really harmful kinks an outlet that it like AI simulated porn or even AI child porn, if maybe that's
You're
going
okay
to
with
make
AI
them
child
less.
porn?
I'm not done talking. So
I'm asking.
So it seems that maybe allowing people to have that outlet in a different way is going to reduce harm. Maybe someone who watches rape porn was going to rape someone real life, but they're watching rape porn, so they're not raping them. And you know what? You can't say that's not true.
I can't
So-
trust someone with those impulses, though, to
Isn't-
keep it in their private home, though, right?
That's fine that you can't trust them. I'm just making the point that Wick's point was really like
It's a coin toss. You can go either way.
Yeah, it is.
yes,
it is
it's
one-sided,
meaningless.
yeah.
It's not
And
a good
we're
point.
just trying to be cautious, right?
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yes,
a little
and-
bit? Isn't
But
rape?
he might be
Isn't
making it worse.
Thank you for the sub, Rabbit. And gang, if you're liking this content, if you're enjoying this content, feel free to follow the channel if you haven't yet. Like the content, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and throw me some sub and bits. That would be great. Okay, Julie, go ahead.
I liked it so much I would force Wick to bring me on.
True.
my question might be dumb, but isn't rape porn in it of itself like a bad thing? Like, isn't it bad for people to get off to the idea of someone being raped?
Yes.
That's an interesting question.
Well,
immoral?
what exactly do you mean by that? Of like simulated? Like
It
like,
doesn't whatever, it's simulated or not, actuality or not. Isn't it bad?
No,
the
well,
idea of
that's- I
someone
think
getting
that-
off to someone
no, I
being
think there's a difference
forcefully-
between-
No. There's a
There's a
distinction.
there's
When
a
I say
distinction-
rape porn, I mean stage rape porn.
Yeah, simulated.
I don't mean actual rape. I
But
don't
what
mean
if the
like
person-
real
but what if
footage.
the
I'm
person
not
watching it
walking on the
believes that it
street.
wasn't staged? What if they believe it's real? Isn't that the whole point? They need to believe it's real so they can get off. That's why they're watching rape porn.
Okay, so that's
No.
a little bit different, but like, yeah, it's difference between, as Katie pointed out, someone watching
a
it and
question.
it's simulated. Yeah, no, these are all valid
Don't
questions and good
apologize.
questions. Like, the more questions, the better. But there's the distinction between, like, yeah, if I'm like walking down an alley and I see a sexual assault occur, and then I don't intervene, I just get off on it. That's different than me watching on my screen and there's some sort of implicit consent. Well, presumed.
How do you know
implicit
there's consent though? How do you know? It's just on
Yeah.
your screen. You don't know.
Well, okay, we can get into,
Okay, so
coercion and
Julie-
sex work and all that stuff, but that's like an entire different
Yeah,
story.
I'm just
So-
curious.
Wait,
So,
wait.
before you go,
It's not a different story. This is a great question. This is W Press.
So Julie, just to make clear, I do agree with you that it is 100% unethical and immoral, in my opinion, to watch rape porn if you're not sure it's acting. If you're not sure it's acting and you watch rape porn, you watch snuff porn, you watch any type of porn or any type of activity where you are not sure consent was given, then I would say you're a bad person.
I feel like
Why?
Wait, can I very quickly?
Yeah,
so
go, yeah.
I was dating this guy. We went on one date, and then he decided to tell me that he has a WhatsApp group with his friends where they send each other videos of women being put into like plastic bags and they're vacuuming
Turn
the
it
air
off.
out.
Turn it off. Turn it off. I don't like that.
Yes. And I was like, so is that stage? And he's like, no, it's 100% real.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I got up and I left and I never talked to that person again. Like there's no, I was horrified by that for weeks. Okay.
Yeah,
like it was wrong that he told me that. It's wrong that he's doing that. It's wrong that those things exist. What I'm talking about and what I believe Corey is talking about
What
is
if it was
strictly in the
consensual?
Is that
concept.
kink shaming? Did you just
Wait,
kink shame?
yeah, why is it wrong?
Yeah.
That's
What if
not
it's
true.
consensual? What if the woman consented?
I literally said that she.
Wait, no.
Oh, I
Yeah,
misheard.
okay,
That's my bad. Wait, that's my bad. Everyone shut up. That's my bad. I misheard you. Continue, Katie. Everyone shut up.
No. What? But again, you would say if they consented, it'd be okay.
Wick, I asked the guy if it's fake, and he said no, it's real.
Yeah, but he's asking if it was like if the women consented to being put
Okay.
in those
real.
Let
bags.
me.
If they
So I'll
consented.
explain.
Yeah, I want to hear the
'cause
rest of what she has to say.
Yeah. So as I said, if you don't know if they consented or not, first of all, even if they consented, it's illegal, right? But if we're talking morally, he didn't know if they consented or not. So I have no idea if they're consented.
Wait, so
I
did
don't
they
know.
die? Did they die?
Yes.
Shit.
Yes.
Okay, so that's okay, but
I thought
okay,
it
so
was
that was
just a
yeah, no,
temporary
you made it sound like it was asphyxia, not snuff.
Not death.
You're talking about snuff porn.
Yeah. That's what I'm
fucked
talking
up.
about.
Okay, can I hear why you think it's bad though?
Wait, there's a lot of points right now. Think what is bad.
The snuff porn. Why watching it is bad?
Okay, so my entire argument hinges on the concept of autonomy and consent. Without autonomy and consent, I don't have a leg to stand on. So consent is very viable. Now, in terms of stuff that are illegal that you consent to, there's like a legal element to that. But if you watch snuff porn, real snuff porn, it's not fake, and you don't know if it's fake or not, that is immoral because we are unaware of the concept of consent, which as far as I'm concerned means consent wasn't reached. If you're confused about whether something is consensual or not, it's not consensual. As
So
far as
you
I'm
would
concerned.
also be against.
Wait.
Oh, go on. Irrelevant. Go.
Okay, so the viewer, so you would say in any sexual act of any kind, even the most vanilla sex, if I don't know explicitly that both parties are consenting, it is unethical to watch that porn.
Oh, good question.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I think watching a lot of porn is kind of problematic because the concept of consent in
Porn
porn
bad.
is in question. How much
I
consent
agree.
is actually being had.
It's anti-porn site,
So
which is
that wouldn't
Anti-porn.
that's not necessarily to mean I would say this person is a horrible immoral person,
Wait.
but I do think that people are way more comfortable engaging and consuming behaviors that they are not sure about consent that was had there.
Isn't that
And
kind
I
of what
do-
outside of porn? Isn't that kind of what happens when people introduce their kinks to other people and they don't really have the education they need to be able to like involve
very
themselves in that
dangerous
type of
very
situation?
quickly.
And they
It
end up
is,
doing things that traumatize themselves because they're
Yes,
horny
but
in the moment.
consensual
and they're fucking,
non-consent,
and
a
it
lot of
goes
people
on, and they're
end
like,
up-
oh god, I didn't agree to this.
Like to Katie's point, because issues with consent. It's not necessarily the kink, but consent.
No,
Yeah.
she said the issue.
But the kink brings in those issues of consent. The
No,
kink
it doesn't.
True.
No,
No,
it
it really
doesn't.
does. It does because
It
there
really
are people.
does.
But there are
Does.
people.
No,
But people.
Stop. Everyone stop. Julie, can you elaborate on that?
What do you mean?
You made the statement that the kink itself brings in issues of consent. Can you
Well,
elaborate?
so if you're fucking someone and they have some sort of type of kink that you've never really heard of before and they bring it up while you're in the midst of fucking, you don't really know what's going on. You're just trying to fucking get off. And they
That's
bring it
not
up and you're like,
okay,
okay, let's do
Julie.
it. And then
That's not
suddenly you're getting beat and you didn't realize that that's what it meant. That
Yes,
can be a
that's not
problem.
okay. That's not
No,
the
I agree it's
case,
not
though.
okay. I don't think necessarily people should be shamed for having kinks in general. I think people should be shamed for trying to make their kinks is something public outside of a sphere where you're sitting down with someone and being open with them, rather than you're in the midst of having sex and you're trying to force it on someone to get off.
But that's not you bringing your kink into the public space. That's just you sexually assaulting someone.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
This is
that's what I'm
violent
saying. That's what I'm
This
saying.
is
That's what I'm saying. If you're gonna have if you have a really like violent, aggressive kink, it should be something you talk about with someone before you're having sex with them, not in the middle of sex.
Okay, Julie, I know you said that you're really into vanilla sex, so this might not work with you.
Vanilla cream. Sorry.
Okay, I'm not shaming you. I'm just like I'm putting a hypothetical here. So what I'm saying is that when you're like doing the caveat of like very violent extreme kinks, blah 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 blah, you can have a like be having sex and then a guy try to put their dick up your asshole. If you're a woman, you've probably been there.
Yep.
That is sexual assault.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
But I think it's those people's kinks that they don't really have in check, where they feel comfortable enough to put it upon a person. Instead of talking to them about it, they feel comfortable enough to put it
That's a
upon
consent
them.
issue.
That's not a kink thing.
No, I know. But I'm saying if you have that type of kink, you need to sit down with them and talk to them about it before. Sorry. I'm shutting up.
Don't let Katie
don't shut
silence
up.
you.
Katie
Don't
can yell
let
at me all
Katie
she
silence
wants.
you.
Hold
I will
on, shut
protect
up.
you
I don't-
against
I don't-
Katie.
I'm letting my kink
don't
out
want
right
you
now.
to
Katie
shut
can
up.
yell at me.
Okay.
Okay, so
I don't want you to shut up, girl. You're
There's
wonderful.
Quite a few people. Quite a few people have their hands up. I want to go to Allison first. Irrelevant, the ginger.
Thank you.
But I wanted Katie to yell at me. Okay, anyways.
The people who the problem with snuff is consent. So, case earlier, Sharon Lepatka enthusiastically consented to her own murder. If that would have been filmed, and in this hypothetical porn, her emails flash up where she's like, please murder me. I don't care if they find my body, please. And you know she consented to her murder is filmed, and then people watch it and jack off to it. Is that fine?
Fine by me.
I'm so confused.
I don't know about that one. I don't know
I
about
don't
that
know
one.
about that either, because it like again, this is where we question when we rob someone of their agency, right?
Because let me walk you down this slide. Let me walk you down this slide. Okay, they do this. It's fine by you, and they're like, "Hey, I want more of this. Can anyone find me more of this? More of people consenting to be murdered, so I can jack off while I'm watching it. It creates a
And then
market.
people get murdered so they can jack
creates a
off.
market.
Your
To a
point-
capitalist Wick,
So-
that's
This
the
is so
market.
ridiculous.
Market speaks for itself. Can
Yeah,
never be wrong.
Irrelevant was
So
next.
it's like,
Irrelevant.
if
was
there's
next.
demand is there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh my God.
I didn't necessarily want to bring this up because this was something that I was going to bring up earlier, but it was kind of a bit off topic, which is that when you normalize this kind of thing, even in pornography or in interpersonal activities, we need to recognize how faulty people are when dealing with consent. So when we normalize things like DLG or whatever, very, very, permanent lasting damage, whatever it might be, that we have a visceral response to, we need to recognize that we don't live in this world where there's going to be perfect consent. There's going to be a lot of coercion, a lot of it. And it's going to look like both parties are consenting, but one person's a little smooth, a little easy on the eyes, a little something like that. And it's probably going to result in somebody agreeing to something they didn't otherwise want to do. And so with that being the case, we should, again, err on the side of caution with normalizing certain behaviors that can have lasting negative effects on people like the brother Wick described.
I
Do
agree.
you feel that way about vanilla sex, Irrelevant?
Yeah, to it. I think we all agree.
Yeah.
There is certain people need to be educated
I
on certain
argued
things about
with you
vanilla sex.
about this.
However, hold on. However, I think that there's the consequences of vanilla sex are going to be less detrimental than something like, beating the shit out of somebody or DDLG or something like this. These things can have a lot more negative consequences in
Most
general
cases
in the way that
rape
they're
and
practiced.
sexual assault are not. I wouldn't call that vanilla, and I wouldn't call that sex. But we're not talking about extreme kinks, right? So again, like I'm all on board with what you're saying.
We are
If you want
talking
to-
about extreme kinks, though.
Yeah, we literally are, aren't we?
We're talking about snuff and plastic bags being put over our heads and
To Relly's point.
Yeah, my point was about specifically extreme shit. I'm not saying like hair pulling, which I think is now getting into
that's
vanilla,
what I
like
asked
it's
you.
pretty vanilla,
I
right?
asked you
I'm not
about
saying
vanilla
stuff like
sex.
that is like up there with snuff.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that you're okay. Can listen to me, okay? Let's work through this together. Let's just work through. I asked you if since we're
$2
recognizing.
for Skill Johnson to say, don't look up hot lunch on Urban Dictionary. 200 bits from
get that lunch?
from Beckett to say the data suggests that violent video games actually have an 80% reduction in youth violence. They provide an outlet for aggression. Okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
Oh, they provide an outlet for aggression. So that seems to work in my benefit of like AI torture
Are
porn.
we gonna
whatever.
believe some random chatter?
No, we're not, because it's not true, but whatever.
I looked it up.
So, Robin,
I
I
looked
am
up Alabama
fine.
Hot Pocket earlier. It's a mistake.
I looked it up too.
Oh, don't do it. He said not to. Anyway, go on. Katie has the floor. Katie has the floor. Katie, go ahead.
Let me talk. I am fine with if we're going to do this acknowledgement of like, hey, at the end of the day, we live in an imperfect world. A lot of people are uneducated about sex. They don't know what they're doing. There's going to be a lot of coercions. There's going to be a lot of issue. If you're going to recognize that, then I think we need to have a broader conversation of whether people should be having sex at all, because most harm
agree.
doesn't happen from extreme kinks. It is happening from pretty vanilla sex, or what it is, which is rape and coercion and sexual assault.
Yeah. Does anybody here disagree with the idea we should be having a very large society-wise conversation about how to consent and get informed consent out of your partner?
No. I agree with talking about consent. I thought the point you were making is that you were erring on the side of caution, that maybe we shouldn't engage in this thing because we agree that it's an imperfect world.
Maybe
Yeah,
we
You're
shouldn't be
saying,
as promiscuous. Yes. Maybe we shouldn't be as promiscuous as we are. Yes, absolutely.
Shut the fuck up. So what all I'm saying is, if your point is we should just have a really broad conversation about how consent is made and proper education, I agree with you. I misunderstood your point. That's not what I thought you said. Sorry, I wasted your time.
Can you say that really, like, aggressive violent kinks are more traumatizing than, or is it? Would you say it's the same thing?
Than being raped?
Well, okay, it's like I don't want to say there's levels to being raped. There's like. Katie. Okay, I'm gonna get canceled.
Raped, Julie?
I'm gonna get canceled. It's one thing to like. Oh God, this is not. I'm gonna get canceled. I don't even know if I can go down this road.
So
you
not
cancel,
down
do
this
it.
road, because a lot of people here actually agree with you because they are bad people.
I am curious because I want to know, and you can look. I will never get at you for just giving your honest opinion here, right?
Well, I don't know if I
disagree
really have
with
this
you.
opinion. I would say other people definitely feel this way. I think a lot of people feel that
I
there's
just want
a
you to
difference
feel
between.
talking about it because this is what you've heard and what you think, and I think.
Okay, well, I'll just say. I think I feel like there's a lot of people who believe that there's a difference between, like, say you're having like sex with your partner and you don't really want to, but you do it anyways because your partner wants to, even though you're not interested in it. And then there's a difference between that or like you're in an alleyway and someone drugs you and beats you and violently rapes you.
Of course there is.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
So, but that's not the discussion, Julie. The discussion is two people who are engaging consensually in hurting each other versus person who rapes another person.
But I think there's a lot of people who engage in these kinks who don't really know what they're about, who end up feeling like they've been assaulted or raped because they don't understand what's going on.
That's exactly the problem.
I agree that people who irresponsibly engage in sex or kink shouldn't be irresponsibly engaging in sex or kink.
Okay, but you can't.
Let Julie finish. Julie,
well,
finish.
I feel like part of the reason for me why I feel like shaming is not the right word because I don't want people to feel bad about engaging in the kinks, but I feel like there's a lot of instances where people who they don't really know what's going on and they don't really know what they're engaging in and they get caught up in something and then it traumatizes them and then it puts them down a road where they're engaging in those kinks as well and they traumatize other people.
Okay. Do you sorry, Ginger, do you want to say something?
Well, first of all, 300 more bits to point out that snuff porn has never been found, as in murders done on camera for distribution as a kink. That's from Beckett. So.
Thanks, Beckett.
Yep.
So
we're calling everything kink now.
My thing is that what Sad Kit Kat touched on is that a lot of people don't understand the ramifications of getting into certain things. There are people that say that will watch porn and be like, oh, I'm totally into BDSM, and like this happened to a friend of mine. She was like, so turns me on, you know, I'm totally cool with it, and I think this is great. She had her first experience where she told a man, yeah, and I'm totally down with it. And he's like, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Smacked her as hard as he could across the face, got really rough with her, bruised her up a bit. She said no. He thought it was part of the the thing. She didn't want to say, she didn't want to make him out to be like a rapist or anything. This got really fucking out of hand. And that's not a random occurrence. There are people who literally think that because they get off on it, watching it or whatever, that they are into it themselves and get
That happened to
way
me.
in
I was
over their
turned on
heads.
to BDSM and I got tied up during sex, and it was super traumatizing to me. I was like crying and trying to hide it until he finished, and then I was super traumatized afterwards. And I was turned on by the idea of it for a very long time. I thought I was consenting. So
I think that's another thing. I was reading this thing the other day. And I was reading this thing, and it was talking about like casual sex today, like casual sex before. You would just like kind of have vanilla sex. But I was reading this like post, and there was like hundreds of women being like, "Yeah, I engaged with sex with this guy, and he started choking me without asking me, or he started slapping me without asking me. He started doing all these things that would be considered a kink otherwise, but because they've become normalized within society, people are just doing them without asking because they think everyone's into it."
Can I talk?
Yes, sorry, Katie. I'm sorry. I love you.
No. Do not
God.
feed into this.
Yeah,
Katie,
seriously, she's literally been talking the whole time. She's
Stop.
literally.
Katie has been monopolizing this, which is fine.
Katie
but
can monopolize me.
Don't let her.
Yeah.
Don't let her.
She can monopolize me.
Steamroll you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I want her to
if
steamroll
you
me.
guys talk.
Yeah,
freely.
Yes,
I don't
but
think you get it. Look at the
but
outfit
Kit
she's
Kat,
in. She can do what she wants to me.
Kit Kat, you allowing her to do that makes her feel like she can do that to everybody else, and that's a complete joke, by the way. That's the problem with consensual issues.
Sorry,
all right?
I'm putting my kinks on everyone else. You're right. I apologize. My bad.
Yeah.
We are
So
in a hype
maybe.
train too, gang.
Katie,
You're in a hype
fuck
train.
off.
Kink
If you
shame
want to
now.
give me some money on Twitch, now would be the time to do it. Okay, with that. Katie, you can talk now, but then I want to hear from Allison too, and Corey.
So
Corey
we can utilize what Ginger said as an example to how maybe Wick and Corey and Julie are fine with me having certain behavior, but that doesn't mean I have the same dynamic with the other people on the panel. And then I might get ahead of myself and allow that dynamic to exist with other people. And that's a flaw on me. It doesn't mean that there's something inherently wrong within the consensual dynamics I have with Corey or Wick or Julie.
No,
It
we should
means that
definitely shame Julie for it.
What did I do?
Well,
I'm getting dogpiled, bro. What?
See, now you're anti-shaming. Good.
So,
yeah. I changed my mind.
So just to be very clear, there are big issues in the BDSM community. There are a lot of people who get into it. They land on people who are abusive and are sexual predators. That is not an issue with BDSM. That's an issue with abusive people within the BDSM community. If we're talking about prevalence here, what I'd like to point out is that in the same way that Ginger pointed out that a lot of people get themselves into stuff they're not really aware of, my point is that women and men who start to engage in sex, generally vanilla sex, non-kinky whatever sex, also experience this. If you talk, we're mostly women here, so we know that a lot of our first sexual experiences wasn't necessarily as consensual as we thought they were.
Yeah, thinking back to my teen years, most of saying yes to sex, I was 100% giving into being pestered. Yep.
Exactly, girl. So like that's what I'm saying, that when we are like focusing on kink and BDSM, we are dismissing the fact that there are serious issues here with quote unquote regular sex as well. As Irrelevant said, there's an issue with coercion and lack of understanding to consent. A lot of women, if you talk to them, if they'll talk to you about their sexual experiences, you'll understand a lot of it wasn't actually very consensual, and that without any kink involved. Okay?
Yes.
So
I think
yes. Go ahead, Julie.
The kinks can be more traumatizing, though, could they not?
I don't know. Let's discuss that.
Like I feel like I said
Let's
earlier.
discuss that after Irrelevant talks. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the whole I agree with what you just said. I don't think anybody here disagrees with it. The problem is when we're talking about very specific types of kinks or sexual acts, that the consequences can be very far-reaching, including trauma and physical lasting damages. So if we have an issue of consent that we all recognize, we should look for minimizing the negative impacts of those activities by saying that there's certain sexual activities that are worse to do with the current society that we have than others. I think we all can agree that if we have issues of consent, we shouldn't be encouraging, let's say, again, beating the shit out of your partner at the same rate we should be encouraging, I don't know, missionary. right?
Okay, so this is why I think you're wrong. And not only you're wrong, you're perpetuating the exact thing that I just talked about. Because a lot of women experienced missionary, but they were actually being raped in missionary, and that traumatized them significantly. I would
Would
actually
it traumatize
venture.
them more or less if they also got beat the shit out
Shut the
of?
fuck up, Wick.
Wick,
So,
Wick. I second what Wick just said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more
Yeah,
or
I
less.
second, but I'm laughing. I third, but I'm
If that
laughing.
also,
Yeah,
if
same.
also they were during that experience, right, which was
Wick,
traumatizing,
did they
if they had
consent?
also had someone beating the shit out of them.
Maybe they
Okay.
consented to missionary, but then they didn't like it, and then maybe they
That's-
consented to being beaten, and then they realized they didn't like it,
Okay,
which is more
Julie,
traumatizing.
do you think that if you consent to something and then you didn't like it, that means you didn't consent to it? Because that's not what consent is.
No. I'm talking about being traumatized. I'm not talking about I'm talking about
Okay.
how it would affect you after.
Okay, so let's actually have nuance about this. The point
Right.
is that sexual experiences can be traumatizing and be consensual, and not be traumatizing and not be consensual. That is also a thing that happens. So it's pretty dishonest to pretend otherwise. Wick and irrelevant. If we're going to pretend like consent doesn't exist, there's no such thing as ethical, perfect consent.
Who is pretending that?
I wasn't
You
the
are
question.
pretending that, Wick.
How?
Julie, I love you.
Sorry, I'll shut up. I'm sorry, honey.
Yeah,
I
how
would
are
s- I
me-
would say if
because you're
anybody's
just-
doing that, I feel like you are, Katie, because you're saying if they consent, then it's okay. But consent isn't black and white, like you're saying to Wick right now.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that obviously people can engage in consent, like in sex or in kink consensually. But every time I do that, people on this panel come and say, but you might actually not know that you didn't like it and you'd be traumatized, which is true. But I'm saying that happens with regular sex too. So this isn't an argument against kink.
But
so
it
the only argument
is-
here, no.
Let me explain why it
Wick,
is. Can I explain
Wick,
why it is? Maybe I'll
I
help
love
you.
that you interrupted me to make a point. Go ahead.
So the reason, right, that while yes, you are correct, normal sex and vanilla sex, right, can be traumatizing. There is it's levels of harm, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say
So
there's like a spectrum.
Yes, it's a spectrum. And so while there is a harm that is risky, right, with just vanilla sex, the risk, and the potential harm goes up through the roof with certain kinks. Do you disagree?
Correct.
Well, wait, doesn't the harm go up of like intimate partner violence in monogamous relationships? Of like you should just not have monogamous relationship because you just can have.
Yeah, but
wouldn't
it's
that be-
it's all a vibe thing. It's all vibe thing. It's not based on anything, Corey.
If
that's
you
the-
if you
It's
never
not-
have a monogamous relationship,
so confused.
or if we stigmatize monogamous relationships,
Irrelevant. Please take
then-
it, please.
Okay.
then we solve
Overlord
intimate
5
partner
for 200
violence.
bits. Katie muted.
No,
and
no,
took
no.
Okay, let's imagine. Can we imagine a
wait,
world?
You don't get to take this because Wick asked me a question and I'd like to respond. So
Okay, yeah, go for it.
okay, thank you. Okay, so Wick, to ask a really annoying thing, like if I'm raping a girl, would she be even more traumatized if I were to beat her up as I'm raping her?
Yes.
Probably yes.
100%.
Yes.
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 Yep.
10,000%.
I think if you
Yes,
leave a woman
that's great.
bleeding, battered, and broken, it's going to be worse
It's
than
pathetic.
just having
It's
sex
pathetic
with her.
that I said that to demonstrate that he's being
Okay,
dishonest.
First of all,
and you all were like,
I
yes.
need to address this.
But
Gang,
it's
we can't
true.
vote for
Wait,
views.
it's not dishonest. We
That's so
all honestly agree with
It's
you.
absolutely true.
I
Actually,
understand
don't agree with
that's
that.
not my
I'm
point,
sorry.
though. Oh my fucking god. Wick, yes, if you rape someone and then you rape her harder, she'll probably be traumatized more. Thank you for the nice imagery. However, when I said that you're pretending like consent
You're
isn't
acting like
perfect-
I'm giving you the imagery here. This was your hypothetical that you painted. You've
No.
been painting the picture. You asked me to say yes or no. I said yes.
No, Wick. Okay.
This is so confusing.
So, Wick, I'm talking about being raped in missionary versus being consensually beaten up. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. And I'm fine if you say being raped in missionary might be less traumatizing than if you are beat up consensually. And if you want to be the type of guy to say that out loud, go ahead. I
can't.
am not going to venture that type of statement because I am not like
Wasn't
a
the
psychopath.
Wasn't the whole point that they consented to it, but then it still traumatized them after because they weren't ready to engage in that type of sex? Wasn't that the whole
What are you-
point?
Yes.
Yes, it
What are-
was.
Yes.
Yes, that was.
So they thought they consented, but because they
Why?
were not informed as much as they should have been,
Mm-hmm.
by the third punch, they've decided, oh no, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
So
This
Okay.
is wrong.
maybe isolating
Yeah,
it
and then
down
you
to
use your safe word, right?
Through your broken teeth, maybe.
Okay. Wait, wait,
Like,
wait,
shit,
shattered
wait,
maw.
wait.
Jesus.
So it's really okay. Revoking consent is always possible, and that's a good thing. I'd argue that if you're engaging in any type of sexual behavior, that at some point you don't have a way to revoke consent, you are engaging irresponsibly in sex. And I'd argue that a lot more women get raped and harmed and traumatized. Sorry, people, not women. I don't know why I'm gendering this. People get harmed and traumatized and raped in much bigger numbers by not being able to revoke consent, not because their teeth are broken, but simply because the way we understand consent and the way that gender dynamics work make it very difficult.
I
Okay?
agree with
So,
you that when
that's
it comes
great.
down to
However,
proportionality,
you
vanilla sex
you
happens
still
way
feel
more
the
than
need
BDSM. Yes, that's true.
feel the need to demonize consensual relationships and to say they won't be harmful when any consensual relationship can be harmful, and then you're saying, well, it's harmful in an extra duper super way, and
No,
it's fine.
If a white
that you-
person, no. If a white person mouths off to the cops, and a black person mouths off to the cops, which is more like first of all, there's more white people, so more white people are going to mouth off to the cops, and yes, there's a potential there, but the risk is less for them than the black person mouthing off to the cops, even though the risk is more, even though there are less black people. It's proportionality. Yes, more people are engaging in vanilla sex, so yes, consent is violated more during vanilla sex simply because it happens
Just
more.
proportions,
But
right?
my argument here is that because of the because of the mechanics of certain kinks, such as extreme
Wait,
BDSM, the ratio of consent being violated, even accidentally, goes up.
Wick, do you have data to suggest that what you're saying
It's
is
intuitively true.
Oh, it's
Well, yeah, but
intuitive.
you're
Okay,
making
wait,
it
can I
like, you know,
re-explain what he's saying?
like, so using your example, like, I don't know all the data in terms of like police engagement of black people versus white people, but like if you want to say something about the kink community specifically, then you have to look at, let's say, rates of sexual assault in the kink community specifically, unless you're gonna, as Katie said, if you have numbers to back
Kink
that up of like,
community is too
No,
broad.
it's
We would need to
intuitive, Corey.
specify it
It
down.
makes sense.
Isn't
We
the
would need
problem
to
people
specify it
introducing their
down. See,
kinks
this
to
is
people
using
who
data
aren't
to
ready for them?
obfuscate things, right? Because the kink community is so broad. Like,
well, then
light bondage is a
wait,
kink,
how are you
right?
making your
Seems-
But when we're
claim
talking
about
about very
black people?
specific
How
things,
how
like
are you making
beating
your
the shit out of someone, that is very specific. First of all, it's hard to
Yeah,
get
Wick,
data
so
on
it
that.
seems
Can
like
I-
How
you're
are you
being
going to get
dishonest
data on
about
that?
the
How
Can
are
I
you
conclusions
gonna
you're
get-
making.
recategorize what is
Yeah,
being
please,
said in a
please
Let her
try.
over the
Because
different
this is-
way?
Okay.
Okay, let's say, because I think we can all agree there is a really big problems with most normal people and how we go about giving consent and how we go about understanding consent. So let's imagine a very human hypothetical where you know that I have had these problems. You know, I have a history of it. I have a pattern of not really understanding what I want sexually, consent wise. I'm not really great at it. And, you're not great at communicating it. Which one would you encourage violent, let's say like, BDSM, like beating the shit out of me at the same rate you would encourage, let's say, a hand job? Would you say encouraging both of these activities at the same rate makes sense? Or maybe we should err on the side of caution and go like, oh, okay, so I know you have a history of really being bad at communicating consent and things like that. And the negative ramifications of a hand job going bad is considerably less harmful than the ramifications of me knocking your teeth out.
Okay. Is that directed towards me? Please. Is that
Sure.
directed towards me? Hey, okay. So I think that maybe a lot of people here are not part of the kink community and they only heard stuff about it. So if you engage in a kink of like beating each other up, that is not something that you wake up in the morning, come to a random person and be like, let's beat each other up, okay? That's not how it goes. So if you're doing that, that is irresponsible, and you shouldn't be engaging with that. That you can engage in kinks irresponsibly, just in the same way you can engage in sex irresponsibly. So my answer is to your question is no, because no person who knows that they have both people have issues with setting boundaries with consent would engage in that behavior, because that's irresponsible. That's the fucking point. And they shouldn't engage in hand jobs fucking either.
Yeah, but
Okay,
which
yeah.
one do you think is considerably worse for the outcomes? Right? For their outcomes. Which ones do you like? We can keep dialing it back to whatever you would like. We don't have to make it beating the shit out of somebody. We can even make it penetrative, like sex, like missionary versus a hand job. If I know that the person I'm talking to has issues with consent, and so do I'm going to be far less likely to go for penetrative sex, especially unprotected penetrative sex, in comparison to like a hand job or like making out.
Don't you think that's an individual thing, though?
I think that in this case, I brought it to an individual level, but I think you can absolutely bring it to a societal level where you can recognize that we do have societal problems with consent. And so encouraging activities that
No,
might
that's
be
not what I
very
meant.
difficult for people to recognize as potentially harmful would be something that we should err on the side of caution of.
Okay, I
So
hate to interrupt
what I
this. I
meant
hate
to
to interrupt
say-
this, but some people need to go, and so I want to give them closing statements before they have to go, and letting them shield themselves out and things like that. We're not going to end the panel. I think this is great, but I want to give an out to people who need to have an out, because consent is important, and being able to revoke the consent of being on the panel is also important. Ginger, I know that you had
Yeah,
message. Go ahead.
I have to leave in like 9 minutes. I'll just, say that I think that we're missing each other here on the ramifications of doing certain things versus doing like vanilla things. I'm not saying that it's hard because I'm in the middle here. I agree that you shouldn't push your own boundaries, but people don't understand what their own boundaries are. People have a very hard time figuring out what their boundaries are, and most of the time your boundaries are found out by situations exactly like that, where you're actually put into the situation and then you find out what your boundary is. That's the difficult part of like the BDSM situations. And when it talks about consent, it's are you informed consent, or is it just consent? That's a difference as well.
Where can people find you, Ginger?
Ginger Remoth, twitch.tv/Ginger Remoth, or on YouTube at the same name, or Twitter on the same name. I'm going to stick around, but then I will just randomly disappear from the panel.
Anyone else need to give a closing? I want to respect everyone's time, so now's your chance. The window is open. No? Everyone wants to argue about this? Cool.
Consenting on arguing more.
Fair enough.
Is it informed consent? If it's a kink for me, does it make it more dangerous for you?
Yes,
Yes.
actually.
Oh my god, you people are
I just do not understand what the problem is with biting certain bullets of these things are just worse for society, right? We can imagine a society where
We're talking
we have
about society now?
Yes, we are.
I thought you were talking about traumatizing individuals.
It's also an
What do you
unfounded
think a
claim.
society is made of?
Of course it is, but
It's made up of individuals. Okay.
Wait, I'm not going to let you get away with that. It's your guys' position is an unfounded claim as well. That we're all like feeling it out. There's no hard data that proves any of us right or wrong. Like it
depends on the specific claim.
Sure. You can poke about the idea that we're on our fifis, but so are you.
No. The
Like,
point
just to be
is,
clear, I'm of the position we shouldn't kink shame. I'm kind of like on your side, but I'm not like on your side on this because it feels like you're very, very fixed on the idea that like you're right, we're in our fifis, you guys got the
let me
data.
explain it.
Data. The numbers don't exist.
I am not right, but I'm not here on a public platform making a lot of uninformed, ignorant statements that are not supported by anything except for my feces.
I don't think
so
it's ignorant.
I disagree. I think
why
you're
would
making
you fucking interrupt me, you fucking asshole? Yes.
But you just said that we're making uninformed, illogical points with our fifis, and you're like, let me speak uninterrupted.
You asshole.
What?
Don't forget, she called you an asshole as well.
I did.
These aren't
Correct.
like I want to clarify because it's not like when I talk about I don't have data for this, I don't have scientific data. I absolutely have
your feet.
intuition. It's not just to reduce it to feces.
Also,
it's just
anecdotal
wrong.
evidence. I mean, it's not
Anecdotal
like,
evidence, which
yeah.
is data. It's just not sufficient data, right? It's not scientifically sufficient data, but these are things that we can observe. These are things that we can measure. These are things that we can intuit out. We can run down these logic trains. We can run down, like, we can imagine scenarios and use hypotheticals to explore boundaries of these conditions.
But
and my argument is that by normalizing or making it more normal than it is to beat the crap, even consensually, out of your sexual partner for sexual gratification leads to harm to society and is therefore immoral. And if someone asks you consensually to beat them up by punching them in the face till you knock their teeth out, you should say no, or you were a bad person.
You're ultimately using actually pretty much the exact same arguments, whatever, 20, 30 years ago of like legalizing same-sex marriage. It's going to result to the downfall of society. Of like if we normalize it, that pretty much just like everyone's just going to be get into same-sex marriage and everyone's just going to turn homosexual. Like that's more or less.
Sexual orientation is very
What?
different.
Same-sex marriage isn't physically harmful to you.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
literally no correlation at all.
Yeah, nobody ever made the claim that
nobody
like
ever
sex,
made
that
no.
gay people will have like diseases and that they're harming each other and there's more injury with
You can-
anal sex.
I
That
didn't
never
really
happened.
say people didn't say that.
I
I
can't
say that
believe this
they're
is being
wrong
tried
though,
right
but
now.
we're right. Like we can distinguish the two.
Yes,
Okay,
but
so-
that's the point. When I said that Wick is saying here and saying a bunch of ignorant things about their fifis, what I said was you guys think you're right, and I'm saying I can admit
Yes,
that
I think
I don't.
beating people up causes physical harm. I'm gonna
Why do
say yes. That's
you do this
that's
on
right. I'm right.
purpose?
It's very
'Cause that-
controversial.
So
Does anybody have a count on how many times Katie's interrupted people? Just
So
So
wondering.
it's in,
Counters at
it's in Wick's
13, I
chat.
think.
We're
So-
at 17 now.
17,
Wick,
sorry,
They-
17.
you're I'm sure you were around when same-sex marriage was not legalized. So this
Yes, I
argument
part of
was
the- I
never made
actually, when people
of
ask
like,
me, have you
hey,
ever advocated for something? I advocated for,
yeah, that's not what I'm asking.
Yeah.
But like, are you? So you're American. So you're probably way more aware of American culture and how it's changed over time. So like this argument of like, hey, if we normalize
What
this,
the argument was at the time, to be clear, is like if we let this happen, then they're going to be what's next? That them marrying what's next?
Marrying
Polygamy?
animals, like
marrying
yeah,
animals,
that's what
marrying
they said.
trees. That was the argument.
right? So yeah, so we shouldn't normalize it because some sort of slippery slope, essentially down to whatever bestiality and marriage with animals, right? That is
And
more or
map
less
stuff and stuff.
sure.
Like that,
Yeah. So from what I understand, that just at least to my understanding, if you distill your argument, that's what it boils down to.
No,
But in this case,
nobody
it's
here
very
is like
close.
we're gonna you guys are gonna start we're gonna start doing BSM and then all of a sudden we're gonna start marrying dogs. Nobody's saying that.
Exactly.
Who's saying
You're talking
The
about some sort of
difference is-
slippery.
Let me explain the difference.
No, there's
Sure.
Let me explain the difference, right? Is that while they were saying that this kind of behavior could possibly cause societal harm, I can point to the physical individual harm that is done to people when they get beat up. I can point to that. I can say this is a thing. This actually happens. If you
And-
punch someone in the face
and
with force,
Again,
you will knock their
you're
teeth out.
you're
It's
old enough
gonna
to
happen.
remember the AIDS epidemic and all AIDS and HIV. So that wasn't used or weaponized as an argument at some point.
I
guess
was
for
like,
gay
that was the
couples.
80s. I was like 2. I don't.
I mean, we can address the STD argument. The argument would only be sufficient if we couldn't get STDs from any other type of sex.
The only argument, but the only argument there was that it was the warning of use condoms regardless of whether you're having anal sex or vaginal sex.
So, right. So practice it safely.
They
in
absolutely
an
were right to stigmatize unprotected sex during the AIDS epidemic. That was a good thing that they did.
And encouraging healthy practices.
Yeah, such as again using condoms, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. I know that you're trying to connect the two, but you're really not going to in most of our minds.
No, I am.
Just
no, of course not.
I think sexual orientation
I'm
and
not
like
kind of feeling the
kinks are
connection
like
either.
very clearly distinguishable. Like the sex or sexes that a person is attracted to is like very clearly distinguishable from the sex acts that a person enjoys participating in. Like we would not call a man exclusively attracted to other men. We would not say this is a guy with a man kink. Like that, we can just clearly distinguish between sexual orientation and like sexual preferences, which I know is used as a homophobic dog whistle. People would say, oh, his sexual preference for members of the same sex exclusively. But I think we can just clearly distinguish sex or sexes versus sex acts.
But that's not Wick's argument, at least from what I understand. That's not his argument.
My
He's saying
argument, let me repeat it so we are clear, right? Is that the individual harm that is done, much like Irrelevant said, we have problems with consent. People don't know what they're consenting to. People don't understand it. They don't understand the concept. So the potential harms of someone engaging in consensual sadism and masochism, right, to after a certain point, right, to a certain degree, becomes immoral, that you can no longer morally either consent to it or consent to doing it to another person. And that line, to be clear, which I have again said earlier when Katie asked me what my line is when there's a high enough potential risk for permanent physical injury.
right, and I attempted to gauge that with the finger, whatever, cutting off the finger
Yes,
scenario.
cutting off a finger is immoral in every circumstance.
Right now, but you're open to it being permissible.
Yeah, if
I have a
if the
question.
variables change, my answer changes. So if we can grow fingers and grow regenerative powers by gene editing, okay, sure.
Like, is rape sometimes moral?
No.
Because it doesn't cause like everlasting damage?
I think it does.
What?
It definitely causes everlasting damage.
I think you have to live with it for
Even
the rest
even
of
in the
forever.
case,
It sucks.
no, let me engage with this. Let me engage with this, because again, it was the potential for harm, and when you engage in rape, the potential for harm, even if it doesn't actually end up causing harm, is so great and so high.
Potential for harm?
We say
It's
no.
just missionary rape.
Trauma, mental harm.
Whoa, wait! I can engage. What if they're asleep?
No, it would still when you find out when you wake up, it's still traumatizing.
Yeah, the potential of
but what if you
someone
don't
finding
no,
out.
what if you don't find out?
You don't know that you're.
Yeah, we don't live
This
in a
is a
world where we
completely different conversation.
Yeah,
just to be
no,
clear,
I'm
This
fifth
one
grade
is-
hard.
I've had this conversation like 9 different times. It's completely different.
on this topic. Thank you so much for having me, Wick. It was a pleasure,
Ginger, it's
everybody.
all a
Thank you
pleasure,
so
yes.
much.
Good to see you.
Go follow her again. Can one of my mods shout Ginger Ramon
Oh,
out in chat?
follow right now.
Go follow.
Okay. Seriously? Holy fuck. I couldn't engage with that anymore. I'm sorry. I actually would have loved to have stayed for longer if I was feeling well, but I have not been feeling well today. I passed out earlier. I've been having health issues. But I promised I would be on Wick's panel, so made sure I was on Wick's panel. Thank you so much, everybody, for stopping by. I'm gonna raid you guys into Wick, because this is fascinating. Actually, hold on. Let me raid. Hold on. Stick around, guys. I'm gonna raid you into Sad Kit Kat because I really like her. Hold on. And I feel like a lot of you like her, so I am going to raid us into there. Sad Kit Kats. Stick around for her raid. Be nice to her, please. And I hope you guys have a great fucking night, and I will see you tomorrow for sure. Peace out. Thanks again.
Consent out of it, and the
Thanks for
consent's
being
no
on the
longer a
panel
problem.
too. That was really
I still have
great.
an issue
I'd love to talk to you
because
again
I still
more
have an
sometime.
issue with someone.
Sorry, I'm being a
who
bit of a
is
tard.
consenting
I
or
had
has
6
consented
drinks.
to
I was
do
too anxious.
physical-
Can we get a shout out,
something
please?
that would, has a potential for a
How do
high
I do
enough
this?
physical lasting.
Can we get a
permanent
shout
harm.
out? How do
Even
I
if
do
there's
this?
consent there,
I
still
I
can't
was
control.
anxious, and so I drank.
Yeah, that would be the disconnect of like because
Is this
yeah.
it?
I think you can